Chapter 616. Qin Feiyong smiled. As long as the black dragon snake nodded now, he had a way to make the black dragon snake change its mind and follow him wholeheartedly 10 years later. In fact, it might not even take 10 years. As for the fire of life, when they become friends and best friends, wouldn't it be the same for anyone? Of course. To be honest, if the black dragon snake couldn't transform into a divine dragon, he wouldn't care. The black dragon snake said, "Do it!" Who? Qin Feiyong took a deep breath and suddenly jumped down from the mountain peak, rushing down. Boom! At the same time, the black dragon snake also dragged its huge body and rushed towards the female crocodile below, its aura surging. Wherever it passed, bushes flew, weeds flew, mud and stones rolled, and even the entire mountain was trembling. Roar! With such a big momentum, the female crocodile naturally noticed them at the first moment. Immediately, it roared, got up, and stared at Qin Feiyong and the black dragon snake. Those huge, fierce eyes flashed with an astonishing light. "Little crocodile, long time no see." The black dragon snake greeted cordially. This voice also sounded in Qin Feiyong's mind. Qin Feiyong's expression immediately froze. "Little crocodile, long time no see." Was this guy here to be funny? Didn't they just meet not long ago? And calling the female crocodile this way, wasn't it too ambiguous? Those who didn't know would think that this guy had something to do with the female crocodile. Get lost. However, the female crocodile didn't buy it at all. Its eyes were extremely fierce, and if one looked carefully, one would find a trace of disgust. "All right, give that flame to this emperor, and this emperor will get lost immediately." The black dragon snake laughed. "You still haven't given up." The female crocodile's eyes became more and more terrifying. In the past, with that old fox in charge, this emperor couldn't do anything. But now that it is restrained by those humans, if you don't give it to this emperor, don't be ruthless. The black dragon snake sneered. Just a moment ago, he still had an incomparably amiable look on his face, but now he turned hostile just like that. The thoughts of these beasts were indeed difficult to guess. "Just you?" The female crocodile was full of disdain. The black dragon snake said, "Although I don't have my reverse scale, I found a helper this time." "Helper?" The female crocodile was slightly stunned. She looked at Qin Feiyong, who was beside the black dragon snake, and said suspiciously, "You guys are in cahoots." Qin Feiyong smiled faintly and said, "Not before, but now." The female crocodile suddenly became ferocious and roared, "How dare you, a mere 9-star combat emperor, come and join in the fun? If you want to die, I will grant your wish." Boom! After saying this, a terrifying, ferocious aura emanated from its body. It raised its giant tail and swung it directly at Qin Feiyong. The battle began. However, the black dragon snake had no intention of helping. It only looked at Qin Feiyong with interest. "Are you observing my strength?" "Humph. Even if I don't use Chang Shui, I'll still give you a big scare." Qin Feiyong secretly snorted and looked up at the female crocodile, his eyes becoming fierce. Boom! The moment the giant tail fell, he raised his arm and slapped it with his palm. A golden light burst out and collided with the giant tail. Eolo! The female crocodile's huge body was sent flying on the spot. The skin on its giant tail was lacerated and its flesh was badly mutilated. Moreover, the wounds on its body that had already formed scabs once again burst open and blood spurted out like a pillar. At the same time, Qin Feiyong also retreated a few steps. His face was a little pale, but that was all. Thinking back to when he was in Yen City, he used the cultivation of a 9-star martial master to beat Lin Hua, who was a 2-star martial lord without any power to fight back. And the current situation was exactly the same as back then. The female crocodile's cultivation was a 2-star war master, and Qin Feiyong was a 9-star combat emperor. The only difference was that the female crocodile's defense was astonishing. Unfortunately, its injuries had not healed and it was unable to unleash its full strength. When Qin Feiyang fought with the black dragon snake, although he was seriously injured, he had already recovered with the help of the fire of life. So, with his current state and methods, suppressing the female crocodile was no problem at all. This scene caused the black dragon snake to be dumbfounded. It originally thought that Qin Feiyang's strength was all because of that dagger. Without the dagger, he was nothing. But it didn't expect that this person's methods were also so heaven-defying. It was only at this moment that it realized that without the dragon scales, it was no match for this human. In the blink of an eye, Qin Feiyang sent the female crocodile flying and took a step forward. His large hand was like an eagle's claw as it reached for the fire of life. When the female crocodile crashed to the ground and got up from the ground, Qin Feiyang had already grabbed the fire of life. "You dare!" The female crocodile immediately roared and crazily rushed towards Qin Feiyang. "Do you think this emperor doesn't exist?" The black dragon snake's gaze turned cold as battle chi gushed out, transforming into a monstrous wave as it ferociously pounced towards the female crocodile. It was also worried. This human was obviously not a good person. If it didn't make a move now, once it angered this person and didn't give it the fire of life, it could only find a place to cry silently. Boom! The female crocodile was sent flying again, the injuries on its body becoming more and more serious. But it was almost crazy as it immediately got up and roared, "You damn bastards, I'm going to tear you into pieces." Behind it, a black light suddenly emerged. In the black light, there was a palm-sized object that looked like a piece of iron and also like a scale armor. It emitted a bloody, dark, and eerie aura. The black dragon snake was shocked. "Not good, this is its war soul. It's very scary." Qin Feiyang was surprised. Even the black dragon snake was so afraid. Could it be that the war soul had some terrifying innate ability? Without any hesitation, he quickly retreated. But the black dragon snake didn't retreat, because the female crocodile would never let it go after snatching away the fire of life. Only by killing it could it eliminate future troubles forever. Roar! It also decisively activated its war soul. Accompanied by a deafening dragon roar, a black dragon soared into the sky. Next, the two war souls rushed towards each other at the same time. Their aura was overwhelming and shook the mountains and rivers. Boom! In an instant, the two war souls collided and immediately gave birth to a destructive airwave that rolled in all directions. Wherever it passed, the mountains collapsed, the earth cracked, and dust covered the sky. At the same time, heaven and earth were filled with a tragic aura. Qin Feiyang also retreated again and again, his pupils constricting. These legendary ferocious beasts were indeed incomparably ferocious. The reason why it was a legend was because whether it was the black dragon snake or the dragon crocodile, they were all creatures from 10,000 years ago. Of course, it was not that they did not exist in this era, but they were extremely rare. Roar! Roar! Without waiting for the dust to dissipate, two roars sounded at the same time. Boom! Then there was a deafening collision sound in the dust. An even stronger wave of battle rippled out in all directions like a torrent, crushing everything in its path. Next, this place fell silent. What's the result? Qin Feiyang had a trace of worry. With a wave of his hand, the wind whistled and rolled up the dust in the sky. His face suddenly changed, because at this moment, the black dragon snake and the female crocodile were lying on the broken ground. Both were covered in wounds and bleeding nonstop. Qin Feiyang quickly ran over and checked the black dragon snake's situation. Fortunately, it was only seriously injured and its life was not in danger for the time being. But if it was not treated in time, it would be hard to say. He took out a few healing pills with 4 pill veins and put them into the black dragon snake's mouth. Then he got up and walked to the side of the female crocodile. When he found that the female crocodile was dead, He could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Then he returned to the black dragon snake's side and said with a smile, "Amazing, you even killed it. If it wasn't for its injuries being more serious than mine, it would be hard to say who killed who," the black dragon snake said weakly. But when it saw the fire of life in Qin Feiyang's hand, it suddenly became spirited. It turned over, raised its head, and hurriedly said, "Quickly give the flame to me. I won't snatch it from you." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and threw the fire of life to the black dragon snake without hesitation. "You're really giving it to me?" The black dragon snake was stunned. It thought that Qin Feiyang might take the opportunity to threaten it and make it sign some unequal contract, but it did not expect him to be so straightforward. Roar! Suddenly, a furious roar rang out from the other side of the island. There was even a hint of grief in that roar. Not good. Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. He looked up at the other side of the island, his eyes full of worry. It must be the crocodile emperor. It sensed the death of the female crocodile and was probably going crazy now. "No, I have to hurry over and help." Muttering to himself, Qin Feiyang withdrew his gaze and looked at the black dragon snake, who was staring at the fire of life. He said in a deep voice, "Don't look, follow me to support them." "It's useless." The black dragon snake shook its head. "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "Fatso beside you is indeed strong, but that old fox is stronger than him. Did you see the female crocodile's battle soul? That old fox's battle soul is exactly the same as hers. And the power of this battle soul is almost comparable to my reverse scale. By the time you rush over, Fatso and the others will be dead. So, think of a way to escape." The black dragon snake sneered. "Comparable to my reverse scale." Qin Feiyang's body and mind trembled, and the worry in his eyes grew stronger. At this time, Fatso's anxious cry for help came from afar. "Boss, Fat Lord can't hold on any longer. Come and save me. Did you hear that?" "You're simply courting death if you run over now," the black dragon snake said. "Although I, Qin Feiyang, am not a good person, I will never abandon my companions and escape alone. Don't talk nonsense. Quickly follow me." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he used phantom steps and sped towards the other side of the island. At the same time, he used all his strength and roared, "Fatso, quickly retreat towards me." The black dragon snake looked at Qin Feiyang's resolute back and couldn't help but be a little lost in thought. Its eyes were also rather complicated, but then a trace of ridicule appeared in its eyes as it shook its head and muttered, "If you want to live longer, you have to learn to be selfish. If you don't even have this awareness, what a foolish human. Your name is Qin Feiyang, right? Since you helped me snatch the flame, I will let bygones be bygones, but don't let me meet you again in the future." The black dragon snake sneered and turned to leave quickly. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and turned his head to look at the black dragon snake's actions. His face suddenly turned cold as he said gloomily, "I thought that my sincerity could be exchanged for your sincerity, but it seems that I'm still too naive." Sincerity? What a ridiculous word! Let me tell you, ever since that incident happened, I will never believe you humans again. Humans are all hypocritical villains. They all deserve to die." The black dragon snake sneered, its eyes filled with deep resentment. Then, without looking back, it disappeared from Qin Feiyang's sight. That incident, Qin Feiyang was originally very angry, but after hearing these words, he couldn't help but frown. What did that mean? Chapter 617. But whether or not there was a hidden reason, the grudge was formed. There's still a long time. Let's wait and see. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly. He turned around and continued to rush to the other side of the island. Boom! Crack! The loud sound of the battle came from afar, making him wish he could grow a bunch of wings. Time passed in the blink of an eye. After more than 200 breaths, Qin Feiyang could already feel the strong fluctuations of the battle. He climbed to the top of a mountain more than 100 feet high and stood on the edge, overlooking the front. He immediately saw Dong Jingyan and the others frantically fleeing this way. Everyone's face was full of panic, and their bodies were full of scars. Xinlong and Jiang Wei both lost their hands. Dong Zhengyang lost a leg. Murong Xiong and Dong Fangwuhan each lost an arm. They were disheveled and extremely embarrassed. Behind them, Fatso and Crocodile Emperor were fighting fiercely. Fatso's injuries were more serious than Murong Xiong and the others. Not only did he lose his left hand, but even the skin on his body was cracked, and on his right shoulder there was a bloody hole the size of a baby's fist. It penetrated from the front to the back and was bleeding nonstop. At this moment his body was bleeding and his hair was bleeding. He was covered in blood from head to toe. He looked like a bloody man. Crocodile Emperor's injuries were also very serious. The scales all over its body were broken. The giant tail was also gone, and one of its eyes was blown out. The eye socket was badly mutilated and blood was splattering everywhere. It could be said that this was a situation where both sides suffered, but it was full of hostility, as if it didn't know pain. It was even more manic than before. Fatso was being suppressed at this moment. "I'm here." Qin Feiyang shouted coldly with a gloomy face. He jumped down from the top of the mountain and rushed toward the crowd. Seeing Qin Feiyang's arrival, Fatso and the others were also ecstatic. In less than 10 breaths, Qin Feiyang met up with Dong Jingyan and the others. Dong Jingyan was about to say something. Qin Feiyang reached out to stop him and said, "Don't say anything. Go to the castle to heal first." After saying that, he waved his hand and sent them into the castle. Then, Qin Feiyang rushed to support Fatso. Crocodile Emperor roared, "Damn human, did you kill my wife?" "I didn't kill him. It was the black dragon snake. If you want to find someone, you should find it. Fatso, retreat!" Qin Feiyang snorted through his nose and decisively activated the battle character formula. Soon after, he slammed his palm into the air. Seeing this, Fatso threw Crocodile Emperor's fist and dodged to the side. At the same time, Crocodile Emperor Crocodile really died. Hearing this bad news, the Crocodile Emperor's gaze froze. Then it raised its head to the sky and roared angrily, "No matter who killed them, all of you must die." Accompanied by an earth-shattering explosion, a black light rushed out from the Crocodile Emperor's back. Qin Feiyang's pupils suddenly contracted. The black dragon snake was not lying. The Crocodile Emperor's fighting soul was exactly the same as the female crocodile's fighting soul. When Fatso saw the Crocodile Emperor activating its fighting soul, his expression changed. He quickly shouted, "Boss, don't go head-on with its fighting soul." His injuries were caused by this fighting soul. Boom! The Crocodile Emperor's fighting soul was invincible. It crushed the golden light and charged towards Qin Feiyang. Before he even got close, Qin Feiyang already felt the threat of death. Even with the protection of the battle character art, he didn't dare to fight head-on. Whoosh! In a moment of desperation, he didn't have time to take out the Changshui, nor did he have a good opportunity to counterattack. He hurriedly used the phantom steps and dashed to the side. Boom! The war spirit arrived in the blink of an eye and slammed into the ground. Dust and smoke billowed and the earth shattered. An earth-shattering shockwave surged in all directions. Although Qin Feiyang escaped in time, he was still swept by the shockwave. He spat out blood on the spot and his internal organs were ruptured. Like a meteorite, he crashed into a mountain in the distance. "Boss!" Fatso cried out in grief. He turned into a ray of light and chased after Qin Feiyang at lightning speed. If Qin Feiyang were to crash into that mountain, he would be severely injured even if he didn't die. In the end, before Qin Feiyang crashed into the mountain, Fatso chased after him and used his body as a shield in front of Qin Feiyang. Boom! Qin Feiyang immediately crashed into Fatso's chest. However, although Qin Feiyang was saved, Fatso was injured even more. He was already seriously injured. After Qin Feiyang hit him so hard, the bones in his chest were all broken, and under Qin Feiyang's impact, his back hit a protruding rock behind him, and his spine was broken on the spot. The heart-wrenching pain made him wish he was dead. He screamed again and again. Even his consciousness was dissipating. Qin Feiyang fell to the ground. Hearing Fatso's screams, he immediately looked up and his expression changed. He endured the pain and quickly ran to Fatso. He grabbed Fatso's right arm and asked with concern, "How are you?" Fatso shook his head hard and said, "I'm afraid I'm going to die." Qin Feiyang's nose twitched, and he said angrily, "Don't say such unlucky words." Although Fatso was usually unreliable, when he was serious, he would not lose to anyone. The most important thing was that this person was loyal. Take the situation just now, for example. If it were someone else today, they would definitely not use their body as a meat cushion to save him. It's true. Fat Lord is not joking this time. Fat Lord's heart is broken. But then again, why didn't I realize your head was so hard before? Fatso spat out blood as he spoke. There was even a smile on his blood-stained face. What? My heart is broken. Qin Feiyang was like a bolt from the blue. His mind was buzzing. Don't blame yourself. Actually, your head is not that hard. My heart was broken because I was hit by the crocodile emperor's tail, but it was only broken at that time. But when you hit it, it was broken into pieces. Boss, Fat Lord went back on his words. He can't accompany you to the capital to avenge you. Don't blame Fat Lord. In the end, Fatso had no energy to continue. He was stuttering. There was a trace of nostalgia in his eyes. It was nostalgia for this world. For Qin Feiyang, for Lu Hong, for Wolf King, he didn't want to die. But when he finished his last word, he closed his eyes and fell into Qin Feiyang's arms. Fatso! Qin Feiyang screamed hysterically. Tears flowed out of his eyes. Now you know how to be sad, but this is just the beginning. I'm going to kill all of you and bury you with my wife. The crocodile emperor was furious. It activated its fighting soul again and charged towards Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang suddenly turned his head and looked at the crocodile emperor. His blood-red eyes were ruthless. He said coldly, "Just you wait." After saying that, he carried Fatso and went straight to the castle. Qin Feiyang, how is Fatso? As soon as they saw Qin Feiyang carrying Fatso, Lu Hong, the pangolin, Yi, and Luo Chinchua rushed forward. Their eyes were full of concern. Dead, Qin Feiyang murmured. What? The 3 people and 1 beast were trembling. Their faces were pale. At the same time, Wolf King, who was trying to break through to 2-star Battle Master, also trembled violently. However, he didn't open his eyes and continued to break through. But 2 drops of tears flowed from the corner of his eyes. Ren Wushuang and the others also stood up and looked at Fatso silently. Their faces were full of sorrow. How is this possible? Good people don't live long, but scourges live for thousands of years. How can Fatso be a scourge? Lu Hong murmured to herself. She couldn't accept this fact. It's all my fault. I underestimated the crocodile emperor's strength. Qin Feiyang's heart was filled with self-blame and hatred. I still don't believe it. Lu Hong shook her head. She walked forward and grabbed Fatso's wrist. She felt Fatso's pulse. There was a trace of hope in her eyes. In this small team, Fatso and Lu Hong were the closest. The person Lu Hong was most grateful to was Fatso, because at that time it was under Fatso's instigation that she joined Qin Feiyang's camp and had today's achievements. Because of this, she found her value and dignity. Otherwise, she might still be in Black Bear City, using her beauty to please those powerful men in order to find a place to settle down. But gradually, The hope in her eyes disappeared. It was replaced by depression and sadness. She didn't feel any pulse on Fatso's wrist. He's really dead. She had to accept it, although it was cruel. But suddenly, her arm trembled. Her beautiful eyes suddenly burst out with a bright light. No, there was a pulse. It was just very weak. It was difficult to feel. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang looked at her in surprise. Lu Hong was silent. She carefully sensed again. Suddenly, she felt Fatso's pulse beating. It was very weak. She hurriedly said, "Fatso still has a pulse. Quickly give him a heart protection pill. Maybe he will remember." Qin Feiyang's body and mind shook. He hurriedly laid Fatso flat on the ground. Then he looked at Wu Yan and the others in front of him and shouted, "Get lost!" Wu Yan and the others did not dare to hesitate and quickly retreated to the side. Qin Feiyang stepped in front of the altar. He opened the iron box and directly took out the fire of life. He quickly turned around and stepped beside Fatso. He placed the fire of life on Fatso's heart. The majestic life energy suddenly rushed into Fatso's body. Because he had not refined the heart protection pill yet, and refining it required time. But at this moment it was a race against time. Naturally, it was impossible to refine it. Moreover, the healing effect of the fire of life was far beyond that of the heart protection pill. Therefore, he directly used the fire of life. Although by doing so, the fire of life would be exposed in front of Dongfang Wuhan and the others, he could not care so much now. What is it? Sure enough, as soon as they saw the fire of life, Dongfang Wuhan and the others were surprised. But there was one person who looked at the fire of life with a strange look in his eyes. This person was Lu Xingqian. However, Qin Feiyang did not notice Lu Xingqian's strange look, because at this moment his eyes were only focused on Fatso's safety. Ren Wushuang walked to Qin Feiyang's side and whispered, "Can this flame really save him?" One must know. If the heart was broken, even the heart protection pill might not be able to repair it, because the effect of the heart protection pill was limited. For example, if there was a crack in the heart, it could be repaired very easily. But if it was completely broken, it would depend on the person's luck. But now, Qin Feiyang did not take out the heart protection pill. Instead, he took out a flame that had never been seen before. It was really confusing. I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Chapter 618. Seeing Qin Feiyang shake his head, Ren Wushuang asked, "Don't you have any heart-protecting fruit?" She thought that Qin Feiyang couldn't refine the heart-protecting pill because he didn't have any heart-protecting fruit. So he took a step back and used this flame. In fact, she didn't know that the effect of the fire of life was many times stronger than the heart-protecting pill. But Qin Feiyang didn't answer. He was really not in the mood to discuss these meaningless topics with Ren Wushuang. His mind sank into Fatso's body, paying close attention to the situation of Fatso's heart. But Ren Wushuang thought that Qin Feiyang acquiesced. She looked at the crowd around and said, "Whoever has a heart-protecting fruit, please take the initiative to take it out and save Fatso's life." Everyone shook their heads. Dong Jingyang sighed. "Fatso fought with the crocodile emperor to help us escape. If there was a heart-protecting fruit, I would have taken it out in the first place. Yes, with Fatso's strength and speed, it's easy for him to escape. He did it to save us. But the heart-protecting fruit is too rare. Not to mention us. I'm afraid even the treasure pavilion may not have it." Shenlong said, "I don't have it either." Dongfang Wuhan shook his head. Ren Wushuang's heart sank to the bottom in an instant. At this time, Lu Hong said angrily, "Can you be quiet?" Everyone suddenly fell silent. Time passed breath by breath. Qin Feiyang had been observing Fatso's heart. The energy of the fire of life was also constantly pouring into the heart, but it didn't get better. It was still torn apart. At first, Qin Feiyang still had a glimmer of hope, maybe because there wasn't enough time. After all, the heart was broken like this, and it would take a long time to recover. But after 500 or 600 breaths, seeing that the heart still didn't get better, he couldn't help but be worried. Even the fire of life was useless? Lu Hong clenched her hands, looked up at Qin Feiyang, and said, "Try the heart-protecting pill again." Qin Feiyang nodded. As long as Fatso was still breathing, he would not give up. He turned around and walked towards the altar. The crowd in front of him consciously retreated to the side. Walking to the front of the altar, Qin Feiyang opened the iron box again and took out the pill scripture to carefully read the refining method of the heart protection pill. Everyone was curious. They craned their necks, wanting to know what Qin Feiyang was looking at. "All of you, turn around." But before they could see clearly, Qin Feiyang shouted without turning his head. Immediately, everyone's pupils shrank as they quickly averted their gazes and looked elsewhere. However, the curiosity in their eyes grew even stronger. People were like that. The more they couldn't see something, the more they wanted to see it. The more they couldn't get something, the more they wanted to get it. 10 breaths. Qin Feiyang had memorized the refining method of the heart protection pill by heart. Next, he closed the pill scripture and put it into the Qinkuan bag inside the iron box. He then took out the pill furnace, the netherworld devil flame, and the medicinal ingredients, placing them one by one on the altar. Seeing that bright red heart protection fruit, everyone suddenly felt extremely incredulous. Heart protection fruit? What kind of joke was this? He also had such a rare treasure? This stinking brat, Run Wushuang, also had a helpless look on her face. After all this time, it turned out that she was just worrying for nothing. But then, they thought of a problem. Since Qin Feiyang had the heart protection fruit, why didn't he take it out to refine the heart protection pill? Could it be that the ability of the flame was better than the heart protection pill? Buzz. After calming down for a moment, Qin Feiyang finally revived the netherworld devil flame and began to refine the heart protection pill. Back then, in the Spirit Cloud Mountain, he only obtained 3 heart protection fruits, and the temperature of refining the heart protection pill was extremely harsh. Moreover, this was also the first time Qin Feiyang was refining the heart protection pill, so he did not dare to be careless. At the same time, Dong Zhengyang said to everyone, "If anyone dares to make a sound and disturb Qin Feiyang, don't blame me for being ruthless." The castle immediately fell into a dead silence. Murong Xiong looked at Qin Feiyang's back as a cold light flashed in his eyes. He secretly asked Dongfang Wuhin, "Is there a heart protection pill formula in the inner hall?" Dongfang Wuhin said no. As the former #1 alchemist in the inner hall, it could be said that he knew the existing pill formulas in the inner hall like the back of his hand. But he had never seen the heart protection pill formula. He was also very curious. How did Qin Feiyang know the method to refine the heart protection pill? Could it be related to that iron book? Crash! 100 breaths passed. A resplendent light suddenly rushed out from the pill furnace. At the same time, there was a strong medicinal fragrance that pervaded every corner of the castle. Whoosh! Soon, a pill the size of a pellet flew out of the pill furnace. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed as he grabbed it in his palm. Then, he put away the pill and the netherworld devil flame, walked to Fatso's side, and handed the pill to Lu Hong. The pill was completely blood red, as if it had been soaked in blood without the slightest flaw. On the surface, there were 4 dazzling pill veins surrounding it. A heart protection pill with 4 pill veins. Everyone looked at the heart protection pill with green light in their eyes. If this was taken to an auction, it would definitely be sold for an astonishing number, but no one dared to snatch it. They could only watch as Lu Hong put the heart protection pill into Fatso's mouth. Qin Feiyang also immediately sank his mind into Fatso's body. When the heart protection pill entered Fatso's mouth, It turned into a blood-red energy and directly rushed towards Fatso's heart. This energy was very large, and it surrounded the heart. The heart was also crazily absorbing this energy. However, as time passed, the energy became less and less, but Fatso's heart was still torn apart. How could this be? Qin Feiyang muttered to himself, his body faintly trembling. The fire of life could not be repaired, and the heart protection pill could not be repaired. What exactly was needed to save Fatso's life? Lu Hong quietly wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes and said, Qin Feiyang, we have tried our best. Now it's up to the heavens. Up to the heavens, Qin Feiyang muttered. Suddenly, his eyes became incomparably simple, and he said, I, Qin Feiyang, have always believed that fate is in my own hands. As soon as he finished, he grabbed the fire of life and stuffed it into Fatso's mouth without hesitation. Will this work? Lu Hong asked. Her eyes were dim and lifeless. She no longer held any hope. Qin Feiyang said, whether it works or not, how do you know if you don't try? As he spoke, he once again sank his mind into Fatso's body, and a trace of surprise crawled up his face. Seeing the sudden surprise on Qin Feiyang's face, Lu Hong was slightly stunned. Could it be effective? She also quickly sank her mind into Fatso's body. Seeing this, Dong Jingyang and the others looked at each other, and then also sank their minds into Fatso's body. The fire of life shuttled back and forth in Fatso's body at an extremely fast speed. Wherever it passed, all the hidden injuries, were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye in less than 10 breaths. Other than his heart that had been torn to pieces, the rest of his injuries had already been healed. However, the fire of life did not go to the heart. Is it still not working? Qin Feiyang's heart sank again, and his forehead was already covered in sweat. This was caused by nervousness. Sigh. Lu Hong sighed deeply. Even if the other places were repaired, what was the use? The key was the heart. Lu Hong's face revealed a trace of sadness, and she withdrew her mind. But just before she withdrew her mind, the fire of life finally rushed towards Fatso's heart. At this moment, Lu Hong's eyes lit up, and the flame of hope was burning in her heart again. Qin Feiyang was the same. Under their attention, the fire of life swept straight to the position of the heart and suspended above the heart. Suddenly, a shocking scene happened. They saw that the fire of life was also torn apart and quickly merged into the fragments of Fatso's heart. Not good. At the same time, Lu Xingqin's exclamation sounded. What's wrong? Everyone looked at him suspiciously, including Qin Feiyang. The fire of life is a rare treasure of heaven and earth. Once this cluster of fire of life dissipates, even if you find the other 8 fires of life in the future, it can no longer transform into the flower of life. In other words, the flower of life will disappear forever. Qin Feiyang, it's not too late to stop it now. Lu Xingqin ignored the others and looked at Qin Feiyang. Fire of life? Flower of life. Everyone was stunned. What was this? Why had they never heard of it? But Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said, How do you know this? Back then, although Lu Xingqin also went to the canyon of the Land of Ruins, at that time, even the Monkey King who guarded the fire of life and the Holy Monkey did not know that it was the fire of life and only said that it was a magical flame. Moreover, the fire of life had disappeared for a long time, and it was impossible for ordinary people to know. At that time, even he only remembered it after hearing Rin Duxing's introduction. But how did Lu Xingqin know? Facing Qin Feiyang's question, Lu Xingqin did not panic at all and said, I have seen the records of the flower of life in an ancient book. Qin Feiyang said, You even have this kind of ancient book. You are really unfathomable. Can you lend it to me for a look? Lu Xingqin said in a deep voice, Now is not the time to talk about this. I think you should be clear about the magical aspects of the flower of life. In order to save Fatso, let the flower of life become peerless. Do you think it's worth it? It's worth it. What's more, the fire of life might not necessarily dissipate. Qin Feiyang said without the slightest hesitation. The fire of life was indeed very important. In terms of value, Fatso was far inferior, but in Qin Feiyang's eyes, not to mention the fire of life, even the flower of life was not as important as Fatso. Sigh. Lu Xingqian let out a long sigh and said, "Don't hold on to such a wishful thinking. I dare to guarantee with my life that the fire of life will dissipate. But this has allowed Fatso to obtain a great fortune." "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang frowned. Lu Xingqian said, "The fire of life will fuse with his heart in the future as long as his heart is not extinguished. It is equivalent to having an immortal body. To be honest, I am quite envious." Immortal body. Qin Feiyang was taken aback and nodded with a smile. "If what you said is true, this is indeed a great fortune." "Why are you so stubborn?" Lu Xingqian was a little angry. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, checked Fatso's heart again, and was immediately overjoyed. The split heart finally began to heal at this moment. Chapter 619. After his heart was repaired, Fatso's life force gradually stabilized. Now he just had to wait for him to wake up. "Congratulations." Lu Xingqian smiled at Qin Feiyang, but it was a forced smile. After saying that, he turned around and walked to the corner, sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and no one knew what he was thinking. Qin Feiyang looked at him deeply and didn't say anything. He turned his head and continued to pay attention to Fatso. "Damn human, come out and die." Outside, the crocodile emperor didn't leave. It kept roaring, and its entire body was overflowing with hostility. Half an hour later, boom! Inside the ancient castle, a powerful aura suddenly erupted, shocking everyone. Everyone looked at Wolf King. Wolf King's small body was emitting a bright light like a golden sun. Suddenly, it opened its eyes, and two golden beams of light burst out. Its eyes carried a great majesty. Qin Feiyang asked, "You broke through?" Wolf King nodded, got up, and said, "Send me out. I want to kill that bastard to avenge Fatso." As he spoke, his entire body emitted a shocking, murderous aura. Qin Feiyang said, "I think Fatso wants to take revenge himself." Whoosh! Wolf King raised his eyebrows, turned into a stream of light, and landed on Qin Feiyang's shoulder. He looked down at Fatso, who was lying on the ground, and muttered, "He's not dead even like this. This guy is really lucky." Then it looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Is the fire of life really gone?" "Gone. However, I found another cluster." Qin Feiyang whispered. Wolf King's eyes lit up and said, "Where is it?" Qin Feiyang whispered, "On the black dragon snake." And Wolf King was stunned and thought to himself, could it be that the flame snatched from the mother crocodile was the flame of life? Although it had been in seclusion, it had heard the conversation between Qin Feiyang and the black dragon snake outside. It was just that at that time, Qin Feiyang did not explain, so it did not know that it was the fire of life. Qin Feiyang nodded. The corner of Wolf King's mouth twitched. He was speechless. "You're really lucky, but from your conversation with it, that guy doesn't seem to be easy to deal with." "Yeah. A treacherous old fox." Qin Feiyang nodded, looking a little angry. Boom! Before he finished speaking, another powerful aura burst out from his body. Everyone was bewildered. This aura was almost exactly the same as Wolf King's when he broke through. Could it be that someone had broken through again? Everyone hurriedly looked at the source of the aura, their eyes filled with disbelief. Even Qin Feiyang and Wolf King were the same. The aura actually came from Fatso. Fatso had yet to wake up, but his aura was like a rainbow. Not only had he reached the peak of the one-star War Master, He was even trying to break through to the 2-star War Master. Was this a dream? One had to know. Fatso had just broken through to the 1-star War Master a while ago. It didn't make sense for him to be so fast. Wolf King was stunned for a moment, then looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "What's going on?" "I don't know either." Qin Feiyang shook his head, his face full of confusion. Lu Xingqian also opened his eyes and sized up Fatso and said, "I guess it should be because of the fire of life." Qin Feiyang asked in surprise, "You mean the fire of life allowed him to break through?" Lu Xingqian said, "I think so, because there's no other explanation." Qin Feiyang nodded. The fire of life was a legendary divine item. The ancient books only had a rough introduction and did not record it in detail. Perhaps he really had the ability to do so. Boom! While Qin Feiyang and Lu Xingqian were talking, Fatso's aura had already risen to the 2-star War Master level. Fuck, this doesn't make any sense. I worked hard and cultivated for more than half a year before breaking through to the 2-star War Master level. But he only got injured and broke through after a nap. The heavens are unfair. Wolf King roared angrily. Qin Feiyang laughed. This is what they mean by if you survive a great disaster, you are bound for good fortune. Wolf King had broken through. Fatso had also broken through by chance. Now, the overall strength of their small team was enough to suppress any of the 9 great states. If they met Wan Qiu and the others in the future, they would no longer be afraid of the spiritual state. It was also at this moment. Fatso's eyelids moved, and he slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were a little confused. Where is this? Why doesn't it look like hell? Could it be that Fat Lord has come to heaven? Ordinary people can't go to heaven. It seems that Fat Lord is indeed a good person. Fatty mumbled, and in the end he even laughed narcissistically. Everyone was speechless. How could this damned Fatso be considered a good person? If he could, then there would be no bad people in the world. Qin Feiyang kicked him and said, "Get up if you're awake. Don't smile like an idiot." "Boss?" Fatso was stunned. He suddenly turned over and got up. Scanning the crowd around him, he said in surprise, "Fat Lord isn't dead." "Yeah, you're too shameless. Even the heavens don't dare to accept you." Wolf King rolled his eyes. "That's impossible." Fatso frowned and looked inside his heart. Wasn't his heart broken? Why was it fine now? What was going on? Was this an illusion? He fiercely pinched the fat on his stomach and grimaced in pain. It's not an illusion. Then why is this? Could it be that Fat Lord is too kind? Even the heavens are too embarrassed to take away Fat Lord's life? He muttered to himself with a confused expression. Can you not be so shameless? Qin Feiyang's face twitched. He fiercely knocked Fatso's head and immediately told Fatso what had happened before in detail. So that's how it is. Only then did Fatso come to a realization. But then a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. He had actually profited from a disaster and broken through to a 2-star battle master? Sigh. However, he suddenly sighed softly again. Why are you sighing? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Without a doubt, Fat Lord was a very good person in both his past and present life. Therefore, one should do less bad things and accumulate more good deeds. Only then will one have great luck. The fatty chuckled. His smug look immediately aroused public indignation. Qin Feiyang kicked Fatso on the spot. He was in so much pain that he cried out loudly. He was still injured. How could he be treated with violence? He scolded Qin Feiyang for being heartless. Of course, this was just a joke to liven up the atmosphere. It was also a different way to express his joy at the moment. Okay, stop fooling around. It's time to get down to business. Qin Feiyang's face turned solemn and a cold light surged in his eyes. At that moment, the whole place fell silent. Fatso sneered. Indeed, I have to settle this score with it. If it wasn't for the fire of life, he would have gone to hell. All this was thanks to the Crocodile Emperor. Naturally, he had to repay it double. Qin Feiyang looked at Dong Xingyang and the rest. You guys don't have to go out this time. Fatso and White-Eyed Wolf will go out with me. Okay. They nodded. Of course. They knew that they couldn't get involved in the upcoming battle. Swoosh! Qin Feiyang waved his hand and appeared outside with Wolf King and Fatso. Boom! Crack! As soon as the 2 men and 1 wolf appeared, they saw a doomsday-like scene. The Crocodile Emperor was crazily destroying the earth. It affected half of the island. The mountains collapsed and the ground was shattered. Qin Feiyang looked around and looked up at the Crocodile Emperor. He said sternly, "We're out. It's time for you to die." Huh. The Crocodile Emperor stopped and looked at the 2 men and the wolf. It immediately looked at Fatso in shock and anger. Why aren't you dead? You think a piece of trash like you can kill Fat Lord? Fatso looked at it with disdain. Wolf King shouted, "Cut the crap. Just cripple it." Cripple me? You guys really have guts. The Crocodile Emperor roared and charged towards the 2 men and the wolf with monstrous anger. With every step it took, the earth would tremble and crack. The momentum was terrifying. However, Fatso was no longer the Fatso of the past. Swish! He took a step forward and walked towards the Crocodile Emperor without flinching. Although the man and beast were walking, their speed was extremely fast. They gathered in a dozen breaths. Boom! Without saying a word, the Crocodile Emperor's battle aura surged and charged towards Fatso. At the same time, Fatso also activated the dragon transformation ability and instantly transformed into a dragon warrior. His terrifying aura shook the heavens. Then he waved his dragon claw, and a majestic battle aura rushed towards the Crocodile Emperor's battle aura. Seeing Fatso transform, Wolf King's eyes widened in surprise. Qin Feiyang said, "His dragon transformation ability is very similar to your Fury of Berserk. However, your Fury of Berserk is not as powerful as the dragon transformation ability." Nonsense, of course I know. Wolf King rolled his eyes at him. The dragon transformation ability was a perfect grade battle art. The Fury of Berserk was only an upper grade battle art. There was a huge difference. However, if they were to really fight, it was still confident that it could easily defeat Fatso. Qin Feiyang did not doubt it. Because the White-Eyed Wolf had a perfect grade battle art, its speed was far superior to Fatso's. Most importantly, the White-Eyed Wolf's battle soul was the nemesis of all battle souls. It could devour anything it wanted. Boom! The Crocodile Emperor and Fatso's battle auras finally collided. Accompanied by a deafening sound, Fatso stood firmly on the ground and did not move at all. The Crocodile Emperor was sent flying on the spot, spewing blood from its mouth. With a bang, it rolled on the ground, creating a huge pit. The pain made it howl in agony. However, its heart was filled with disbelief. It got up and stared at Fatso, roaring, "How did you become so strong all of a sudden? I have to thank you for this. If not for you, Fat Lord would not be able to break through to 2-star battle ancestor so quickly. Quickly show me your battle soul. Otherwise, you have no chance of winning." Fatso smiled coldly. "What? 2-star battle ancestor?" The Crocodile Emperor was stunned. Not only did it fail to kill this person, but it also helped him break through? This was a great humiliation. Roar! The Crocodile Emperor roared, and a dark light rose behind it. There was a palm-sized object in it. Wolf King asked, "This is its battle soul?" Qin Feiyang nodded. "No matter how strong the battle soul is, it is just trash in front of me." Wolf King did not care and immediately activated his battle soul. A golden beast shadow appeared in the sky, exuding the majesty of a supreme beast. The Crocodile Emperor looked up at the beast shadow, and its pupils contracted. This battle soul made it feel an inexplicable sense of panic. "Brother Wolf, You don't have to deal with this small fry. You just have to watch the show. Chapter 620. All right, I'll watch your performance. But if I'm not satisfied with your performance, I'll beat you up. Wolf King glanced at Fatso indifferently. With a thought, the golden beast shadow quickly dissipated. Don't worry, I guarantee that you'll be satisfied. Fatso chuckled. Roar! Accompanied by a deafening dragon roar. A black dragon rose from behind Fatso. The black dragon was dozens of feet long, like a mountain ridge in the sky, releasing a shocking dragon aura. Black dragon horn. Fatty let out a low growl. A thick dragon horn quickly grew out from the center of the black dragon's head. The dragon horn was more than 10 meters long and as thick as a thigh. Its surface was glowing with a black light. It was like a divine weapon had appeared in the world. Its divine might was vast and mighty, and it shook the space and the earth. Wow, it even has a dragon horn. This black dragon soul is quite powerful. Wolf King was surprised. Qin Feiyang smiled. The dragon soul is one of the most powerful fighting souls in the world. Wolf King asked telepathically, What about your purple gold dragon soul? Who knows? Qin Feiyang shrugged his shoulders, revealing an unfathomable expression. TSK. Wolf King glanced at him in disdain. Little worm, have a taste of the power of your fat Lord Dragon Soul. Kill. At this moment, Fatty let out a low growl. Before his voice died away, the black dragon soul dragged its huge body across the sky and rushed toward the black artifact with earth-shattering might. Boom! In an instant, the dragon horn and the black artifact collided. Crack! An ear-piercing sound suddenly exploded, resounding through the clouds. The black artifact was shattered into pieces under the impact of the dragon horn and turned into nothingness in the blink of an eye. Puff! The crocodile emperor spat out a mouthful of blood. Its huge eyes were filled with shock. Previously, it had fought with Fatso's dragon soul, but at that time the dragon soul was no match for its fighting soul. But now, Fatso had broken through to 2-star War Master, and the power of the dragon soul had also increased explosively. Its fighting soul was already unparalleled. How is it? Do you feel hopeless? Fatso grinned. The black dragon soul swooped down and pounced towards the crocodile emperor ferociously. The one who should despair is not me, but you. The crocodile emperor's eyes were filled with murderous intent. After he finished speaking, he let out a thunderous roar. Roar! On the other side of the island, loud roars could be heard as if responding to the crocodile emperor. Boom! Following closely, the island over there exploded with a series of loud noises. In the meantime, half of the island shook violently, and even a few mountain peaks in the distance collapsed. Qin Feiyang was extremely bewildered. What are you doing? He asked angrily. Do what? Of course it's to destroy this island. At that time, no matter how powerful you are, you won't be able to escape death. Emperor Crocodile grinned. Boom! Having said that, the Crocodile Emperor did not retreat. Instead, it charged towards Fatso's black dragon soul. Leave all of you to die with us. The Crocodile Emperor roared as its head was torn to pieces by the black dragon snake. Its blood dyed the ground red. Bam! Then its huge body fell to the ground and died on the spot. Boom! The loud noises on the other side of the island were deafening, and the island was shaking more violently. Damn it! Fatso cursed and dispersed the black dragon snake. He turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked, Boss, what do we do now? Qin Feiyang's face was solemn as well. Destroy the island and let them die with it. He did not expect the Crocodile Emperor to do such a crazy thing. After pondering for a moment, Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Dong Zhanyang, Jiang Wei, Shenlong, Dong Fengwuhen, and Morongxiong appeared. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice, Follow Fatso immediately and kill the 13 king crocodile. Dong Xingyang asked, what about the other dragon crocodiles? Qin Feiyang's eyes were cold as he said coldly, kill them all. Boss, I'm afraid this method won't work. Because they can sneak into the swamp and destroy the foundation of the island. By then the island will still sink. Fatso said, Dong Xingyang, and the others nodded. Qin Feiyang said, I've thought about this before, but now we can only do our best to stop them from destroying the island. Dong Xingyang said, all right, we'll do our best. Whoosh! The 6 of them immediately rushed to the other side of the island. Watching the 6 of them leave, Wolf King asked, what are the 2 of us doing? Qin Feiyang said, looking for a way to leave the island. It was obviously unrealistic to build a bridge now, so they had to find another way. What other way is there? Wolf King looked at him suspiciously. Look for the black dragon snake. The black dragon snake has lived here for hundreds of years. It might have a way to leave this place. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. Whiz! 1 man and 1 wolf immediately turned around and rushed towards the valley. The valley was where Qin Feiyang and the black dragon snake parted ways. If they wanted to find the black dragon snake, they naturally had to start there. Qin Feiyang was not worried about not being able to find it. Firstly, the black dragon snake would definitely leave traces along the way. Secondly, Wolf King could also track the scent of the black dragon snake. Soon, they arrived at the valley, but the valley had already collapsed when they fought with the mother crocodile, leaving behind a mess. Qin Feiyang recalled the direction the black dragon snake left in and chased after it. Sure enough, along the way, the black dragon snake left traces, which was still a wide ditch. Following these traces, a man and a wolf arrived in front of a canyon in the south. The canyon was surrounded by mountains on all sides, and there was only one narrow entrance. The traces led to that entrance. Little Qin Zi, I have a question that has always puzzled me. According to your character, you should have killed Dongfang Wuhan long ago. But why did you forgive them again and again? The Wolf King asked telepathically as he flew toward the canyon. Killing them like this is too easy for them. I want to leave them until the end. Let them feel despair, pain, and regret for the rest of their lives. Qin Feiyang sneered, and a fierce look flashed in his eyes. Of course. His voice was very low, and only Wolf King could hear it. No one in the castle could hear it. Leave them until the end. Wolf King was stunned, and then seemed to understand something. He secretly laughed and said, You are really not a good guy. Do you know how to talk? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him. While talking, a man and a wolf came to the entrance and rushed in without hesitation. The canyon was lush with vegetation and rocks, but it was not big, about 5 or 6 meters. In the corner of the canyon, a huge python was lying in the grass, and a palm-sized flame was floating in front of it. The python was staring at the flame intently, drooling, and didn't even notice the arrival of Qin Feiyang and Wolf King. That's right. The python was the black dragon snake. The flame was the fire of life. When Wolf King saw the fire of life, his eyes suddenly lit up. Qin Feiyang laughed and said, Little bug, we meet again. This is fate. The black dragon snake was shocked, but when it saw Qin Feiyang, a trace of anger climbed up in its eyes and it roared, Why are you always haunting me? Qin Feiyang strode to the opposite side of the black dragon snake and said with a faint smile, You treat me like a fool, so of course I won't let it go. What do you want? Let me tell you, my reverse scale has been reborn. 10 of you are no match for me. Get out of here if you don't want to die. The black dragon snake shouted impatiently. Yo, so powerful. Come on, let me have a taste of your strength. The Wolf King took a step forward and transformed into a muscular wolf that was more than 10 meters tall. His ferocious aura surged, causing the entire canyon to tremble. The black dragon snake looked at Wolf King in surprise and said, Who are you? This is between me and him. What does it have to do with you? Sorry, little Qin Zi is my little brother. My little brother was fooled, so I must help my little brother get back at him. I heard that your stupid dragon scale is very powerful. Come on, let me see it. The Wolf King stood on the ground and looked down at the black dragon snake with eyes full of contempt. Little brother? Qin Feiyang's face twitched. Stupid thing? At the same time, the black dragon snake was stunned and became furious on the spot. It said coldly, "Looks like you want to die. Then I'll fulfill your wish." Finished. Accompanied by a loud clanging sound, the reverse scale on the black dragon snake's forehead suddenly fell off, and with a world-destroying edge, it charged towards Wolf King. Qin Feiyang said, "Don't waste time with it. Brother knows." Wolf King laughed and waved its claws. A rib appeared, and then it grabbed the rib and used it as a stick to smash the reverse scale. Clang! The dragon scale shattered on the spot. The black dragon snake spurted out blood, and its eyes were filled with shock. It actually shattered its reverse scale with a single strike. Is this a dream? Boom! It suddenly quivered and turned its head to crash into the mountain behind it, causing the mountain to collapse on the spot. Immediately, without saying a word, it rolled up the fire of life and fled in panic without looking back. Why are you running? Wolf King grinned, stepped on the air, and appeared in front of the black dragon snake in a few flashes. At the same time, Qin Feiyang also used phantom steps and blocked the back of the black dragon snake. Being blocked from the front and back, the black dragon snake was burning with anxiety. It roared at Wolf King, "We are the same kind, and you actually helped a human to deal with this emperor. Do you have any self-respect? I already said that he is brother's little brother. Brother will definitely help him. Cut the crap, hand over the fire of life, and submit to us. Brother will let bygones be bygones. But if you dare to refuse, brother's dog-beating stick will take your life." Wolf King laughed coldly. The black dragon snake looked at the rib on Wolf King's claws, and the fear in its eyes was undisguised. Suddenly, it turned to look at Qin Feiyang and smiled. "Brother, let's still follow our initial agreement. This emperor will follow you for 10 years, and this fire of life will still belong to this emperor. How about it?" There was a hint of flattery in his words. "There's only one chance." Qin Feiyang shook his head. The black dragon snake smiled flatteringly. "Don't be like this. It was indeed this emperor's fault at that time. Can't this emperor apologize to you?" The speed at which he turned hostile was faster than flipping a book. Wolf King said disdainfully, "Do you think that you still have the qualifications to negotiate with us now? This emperor—" The black dragon snake wanted to say something. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and said indifferently, "You don't have to say anything. I'll give you another chance." All right. Speak. Chapter 6:21. The fire of life belongs to me. As for your life, I can keep it for now, but I want to observe your performance. If your performance satisfies me, I won't kill you. But if you dare to go against me, then don't blame me for being ruthless. You don't have the conditions to choose. This is the only way. If you don't agree, die now. Qin Feiyang's tone was very decisive, leaving no room for negotiation. Then wouldn't this emperor not only get no benefits, but also have to sacrifice the rest of my life? Don't you think you're going too far? The black dragon snake said angrily, "I'm going too far. When you asked for the fire of life, did I give it to you without a second thought? But how did you treat me? If it weren't for the fact that you still have some value, I would have killed you long ago. Why would I talk so much nonsense with you? You asked for it. It has nothing to do with anyone. You don't agree?" Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly as he looked at Wolf King and said, "Kill it." The black dragon snake hurriedly said, "Don't. Don't, this emperor agrees. Wouldn't it have been better if you did this from the beginning? Qin Feiyong smiled coldly, stretched out his hand, and said, Give it to me! The black dragon snake looked at the fire of life, its eyes full of unwillingness and reluctance, but in the end it obediently handed it to Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong grabbed it in his hand and stored it in an exquisite jade box. If you didn't go back on your words, how good would we be getting along now? You're courting death, do you know that? Wolf King sneered. Yes, yes, yes. The black dragon snake nodded repeatedly, feeling bitter in its heart. Qin Feiyong took out 2 pills from the Chenkuan bag and threw them to the black dragon snake. He also put the jade box containing the fire of life into the Chenkuan bag. The black dragon snake asked suspiciously, What pills? Qin Feiyong said, Barrier-breaking pill and transformation pill. It can let you speak and change the size of your body. The black dragon snake's eyes lit up and swallowed the 2 pills without hesitation. Qin Feiyong was stunned for a moment before he asked playfully, Aren't you afraid that it's poison? What are you afraid of? With your strength, you can easily kill me. Is there a need to poison me? The black dragon snake pursed its lips. You're quite aware of this. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. Then his expression turned serious. There is an emergency, and I need your help. What's the situation? The black dragon snake was surprised. Qin Feiyong pointed to the west of the island and said, Do you hear the sound coming from there? The black dragon snake nodded and said, Aren't your companions fighting with the crocodile emperor? No. Qin Feiyong shook his head and said solemnly, It's the crocodiles that are destroying the island. What? The black dragon snake's pupils shrank as he asked in surprise, Where's that old fox? Qin Feiyong said, The crocodile emperor has been killed by us. The black dragon snake's heart was suddenly in turmoil. Having lived on the island for hundreds of years, it knew the crocodile emperor's strength better than anyone else. It could definitely be called an overlord. But in the end, it died in the hands of this group of humans. It seemed that the strength of this group of humans was far stronger than what it had seen before. The black dragon snake calmed down and asked, You want me to stop them? Qin Feiyong asked, Can you? The black dragon snake shook its head and said, I don't have the ability because those vicious crocodiles only listen to the crocodile emperor's orders. Qin Feiyong frowned and said, Then do you have a way to leave this place? No. If there was a way, I would have left long ago. I wouldn't have lived here for hundreds of years. The black dragon snake sighed with a hint of mockery in its eyes. On one hand, it was mocking itself. On the other hand, it was mocking Qin Feiyong. Was there any meaning to snatching the flame of life when he was about to die? Qin Feiyong ignored it. He lowered his head and frowned. The black dragon snake said, Don't think about it. Unless you can fly or subdue a crocodile king, you will definitely die. Fly. Subdue a crocodile king? Qin Feiyong was stunned. These 2 options were worth a try. He looked at the Wolf King and said, Give me the rib. Why? The Wolf King was puzzled. Qin Feiyong said, Don't talk nonsense. Give it to me. The Wolf King looked at him suspiciously and threw the rib to Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong grabbed the rib and looked up at the sky. The gravity above the iron chain bridge leading to the ruins was many times more terrifying than the gravity here. But this rib could dispel the gravity. In that case, dispelling the gravity here would not be a problem. Whoosh! After making full preparations, Qin Feiyong suddenly jumped up. As soon as he jumped into the sky, the gravity surged. At the same time, the rib in his hand glowed with a hazy brilliance. Qin Feiyong immediately felt his body become light and suspended in the void. The gravity also disappeared. Really? Qin Feiyong was overjoyed. The Wolf King looked at this scene and was also very surprised. The black dragon snake was full of surprise. What kind of bone could break the rules here? Flying. For creatures living in the 9 nether hell, flying was simply something that they did not dare to hope for. How could the black dragon snake not be surprised when it happened in front of its eyes? The Wolf King shouted, "Little Qin Zi, fly around for me." Qin Feiyong nodded with a smile, but at this moment a sudden change occurred. A gravitational force that was even more powerful than before descended from the sky and smashed onto Qin Feiyong's body. Bang! At this moment, Qin Feiyong smashed into the ground below like a meteorite. Blood kept coming out of his mouth, and his body was about to fall apart. What's going on? The Wolf King stared and hurriedly ran to Qin Feiyong's side, asking with concern, "Are you still alive? You want me to die, don't you?" Qin Feiyong looked up and glared at it angrily. Even if it cared about someone, it shouldn't care about him like this. Then he looked up at the sky, his eyes full of surprise. The previous situation gave him the feeling that someone was secretly controlling the gravity, and it seemed to be warning him not to break the rules here. But wasn't this too ridiculous? The Wolf King egged him on. "Why don't you try again?" Qin Feiyong pondered for a while, got up, grabbed the rib, and jumped into the sky again. The gravity immediately shrouded him. But this time, something even stranger than the previous one happened. The rib in his hand did not respond. Without a doubt, he was blasted down by the gravity again, creating a big pit. What's going on? The Wolf King looked at the sky in bewilderment, unable to understand. Qin Feiyong got up in a sorry state and said in a deep voice, "There's only one explanation. The rib is afraid and doesn't dare to wake up." What? The Wolf King was dumbfounded. Qin Feiyong said, "It seems that the 9 nether yellow springs is far from the ruins. We can't break the rules here anymore." The Wolf King asked, "Then tell me who set the rules here?" One must know that the owner of this rib was Mu Tianyang. Mu Tianyang was the emperor of the previous dynasty's Tianyang Empire and was a strong opponent of the first emperor of the Great Qin Empire. One could imagine how strong he was. Now that even the rib was afraid, then wouldn't the person who set up this rule be even more terrifying than Mu Tianyang? Suddenly, the Wolf King seemed to think of something and looked at Qin Feiyong in surprise. Could it be him? Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled. He pondered for a while and nodded. It could be him. Who? The black dragon snake asked curiously. The Wolf King immediately frowned and said coldly, "It's none of your business, don't ask." The black dragon snake shrank its neck, its eyes full of fear. The person that Qin Feiyong and the Wolf King were talking about was naturally the first emperor, because in this world, only this legendary supreme existence had this ability, and only this founding emperor of the Great Qin Empire had the strength to make Mu Tianyang afraid. But this was just a guess. What was going on was still to be verified. However, flying was definitely impossible. Now there was only one last way, which was to subdue the king crocodile. Qin Feiyong shook off the soil on his body, put away the rib, and rushed to meet up with Fatso with the Wolf King and the black dragon snake. A few hundred breaths later, Qin Feiyong came to the other end of the island and saw Fatso and the others standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at the swamp in front of them with ugly expressions. And in the swamp, not a single dragon crocodile could be found. Qin Feiyong frowned and asked, "What's the situation?" Fatso said angrily, "These beasts are very cunning. When they saw us coming, they all hid below. The most important thing is that the footholds further away have been destroyed by them. Right now, the closest foothold to us is 600 to 700 meters away. There's no way to go over such a long distance." Dong Zhenyang said in a deep voice, his face full of worry. The black dragon snake said disdainfully, "If you don't get rid of the crocodiles first, even if there is a foothold, do you dare to go over?" Because of the death of the crocodile emperor, the crocodile group had already gone crazy and would definitely not chase them away like before. Just as the black dragon snake said, once they landed on other islands or mounds, the crocodile group would definitely chase after them and beat them up. Moreover, it was countless times more dangerous than on this island, because the other islands and mounds were too small and fragile. They could not withstand the impact of the crocodile group. However, if they did not think of a way, when the crocodile group destroyed the foundation of the island, they would still sink into the swamp with the island. It would still be a dead end. Boss, Fat Lord doesn't want to die young. You must think of a way. Fatso looked helplessly at Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong looked at the swamp, his eyes flickering, and said after a moment, "You guys stay here and watch. I will go to the castle and ask Ren Wushwang and the others. Black Dragon Snake, you will follow Fatso from now on. No matter what he says, you have to listen unconditionally." After saying that, he flashed and went to the castle. "You want this emperor to follow you, fat pig?" Hearing Qin Feiyong's words, the black dragon snake immediately looked at Fatso, its eyes full of disdain. "What? Following Fat Lord, are you at a disadvantage?" Fatso raised his eyebrows. The black dragon snake said disdainfully, "With your wretched appearance, why don't you go and look in the mirror? Are you worthy of this emperor? You're not much better." Fatso snorted coldly. The black dragon snake said, "As long as I'm better than you." Fatso rolled up his sleeves and said angrily, "Fat Lord's temper, are you asking for a beating? You're the one who's asking for a beating. If you have the guts, wait for this emperor to repair his reverse scale and fight. Whoever loses will be my follower." The black dragon snake provoked, full of confidence. "Yo, you're quite timid. You even dare to provoke Fat Lord." Fatso let out a strange cry, looked at the black dragon snake as if he was looking at an idiot, and said, "All right, Fat Lord, just you wait. If I don't beat you up until you cry for your father and mother, Fatso's name will be written upside down." Chapter 6, 22. Inside the castle, Qin Feiyong glanced at Wu Yan and the others, saying, "I believe you all have heard the situation outside. If you have any ideas, quickly tell us so that we can consider them." Everyone looked at each other, but in the end, no one spoke. Their faces were full of helplessness. Alas, you and Dong Zhenyang can't do anything. What good ideas can we come up with? Lu Xingqian sighed softly. Ren Wushwang said angrily, "Do we have to give up because there's no way?" I don't want anyone to say such discouraging words again. Ideas are thought of by people. Everyone, think about it carefully. Lu Xingqian said, "Wushwang, I know you have a strong personality, but now the facts are in front of us. What can we do?" Ren Wushwang raised his eyebrows, saying, "Don't call me so intimately. Do you know me well?" "We used to have an engagement." Lu Xingqian smiled bitterly. "That was in the past. Now, other than being in the same sect as you, we have nothing to do with each other." Ren Wushwang said coldly. Lu Xingqian sighed deeply, but at the same time a flash of light flashed in his eyes. He looked up at Qin Feiyong and said, "Brother Qin, I suddenly thought of a way." Everyone was stunned and looked at Lu Xingqian, their eyes full of expectation. Qin Feiyong was also surprised and asked, "Really?" Lu Xingqian said with a smile, "At this time I don't dare to talk nonsense." Qin Feiyong said, "Tell me." Lu Xingqian said with a mysterious smile, "I can't say, just take me out." Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed slightly. Without hesitation, he led Lu Xingqian out of the castle. When they appeared outside, Lu Xingqian did not greet Fatso and the others. He looked directly at the swamp in front of him and frowned slightly. "Wait a moment." Next, Lu Xingqian said a few words to Qin Feiyong before he turned around and left alone. "What's the situation?" Seeing this, Fatso and the others looked suspicious. Qin Feiyong said he had a way to leave the island. "Really?" Everyone was bewildered. Qin Feiyong shook his head and said, "I don't know, but that's what he said." Dong Zhenyang said, "This person is really hard to see through." Qin Feiyong was taken aback. He looked at Dong Jingyang and the others and said, "You are all from the prefecture city, and your ages are about the same. You should know Lu Xingqian better than I do, right?" Dong Jingyang said, "We did understand the Lu Xingqian of the past, but the current Lu Xingqian—" At this point he frowned, his face full of confusion. Xinlong and the others were the same. Qin Feiyang and Fatso looked at each other, their eyes shining with an inexplicable light. Boom! The crocodile group was still destroying the foundation of the island below. The rumbling sound was incessant. At first, only half of the island was trembling, but in the end the entire island was shaking violently. They even faintly felt that the island was shaking. At this rate, the island would definitely sink into the swamp in less than an hour. What's going on? Didn't you say to wait a while? It's already been half an hour. Why hasn't he returned yet? Morong Xiong said angrily. Dong Zhenyang and the others were also restless. Fatso frowned and said, "Boss, do you think he will sneak away quietly?" "Probably." Qin Feiyang wanted to say that it should be impossible, but he really couldn't figure out the current Lu Xingqian, so he didn't dare to make a judgment. Boom! Suddenly, a particularly ear-piercing sound came from the north. Qin Feiyang was shocked and hurriedly turned his head to look. He immediately saw a large piece of land collapse and quickly sink into the swamp. "It's over, it's really over this time." The black dragon snake wailed. Dong Jingyang said in a deep voice, "It seems that in less than an hour, the island will completely sink." Morong Xiong gritted his teeth and said, "Let's split up and find Lu Xingqian." "Don't go. None of us know when he will come back. What if he comes back and we're not there? Won't we have to waste time looking for us? What we have to do now is to stay here and quietly wait for him to come back." Qin Feiyang said. Morong Xiong said, "But what if he doesn't come back?" "If he doesn't come back, we'll think of another way. Although the swamp can swallow everything, as long as we hide in the castle, our lives won't be in danger for the time being." Qin Feiyang said. Boom! Accompanied by a loud noise, a large piece of the land in the south also collapsed. Their hearts gradually sank into an ice valley. Although they could hide in the castle in the end, the castle could only protect them for a while, but not forever, because once the castle sank into the swamp, they could forget about coming out. At that time, it would still be a dead end. Crack! Suddenly, another loud noise came from under their feet. Qin Feiyang looked down and suddenly raised his eyebrows. The ground under their feet also cracked open a crack. "Retreat!" Qin Feiyang shouted. Fatso and the others also noticed this situation at the first moment. Immediately, the group of people retreated like lightning. Boom! As soon as they retreated, the crack expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye and spread to both sides. In less than 5 breaths, a piece of land hundreds of meters wide broke off from the island and sank into the swamp in the blink of an eye. However, this was just the beginning. The island shook violently like a small boat in a storm, teetering on the verge of collapse. Boom! In less than 100 breaths, the island, which was originally thousands of feet wide, was now only about 500 feet wide. And now the speed of the island's collapse was several times faster than at the beginning. Xinlong said in a deep voice, "If Lu Xingqian didn't leave alone, then I'm afraid he's in danger now. Let's hurry to the castle." In the past, I was really curious about Qin Feiyang's castle and wanted to go in and have a look, but now I really don't want to go in. Jiang Wei smiled bitterly. Dong Zhenyang, Morong Xiong, and Dong Fengwuhen also nodded, feeling the same. Because once they went in, they might not be able to come out for the rest of their lives. But now, it seemed that there was no other way. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile, "Only when people are alive will they have a chance." Dong Jingyang sighed. "You're the only one who can laugh now." Regarding Qin Feiyang's temperament, they all felt inferior. As a person, you have to be optimistic. Qin Feiyang smiled and was about to bring them to the castle. Sorry to have kept you waiting. But at this moment, Lu Xingqin's voice came from afar. Everyone's eyes lit up as they raised their heads to look. Immediately, they revealed looks of bewilderment. At this moment, Lu Xingqin was extremely embarrassed. His clothes were torn, his body was covered with wounds, and his face was extremely pale. But that wasn't the point. The point was that behind him was a 30-meter-long dragon crocodile. Obviously, it was a crocodile king. The crocodile king also had countless wounds on its body. It was full of murderous aura. But at this moment, it was obediently following behind Lu Xingqin like a loyal follower. Soon, Lu Xingqin came in front of Qin Feiyang and the others. The crocodile king also stopped behind him, staring at them fiercely. Xinlong looked at the crocodile king suspiciously and said, "Lu Xingqin, what's going on?" Lu Xingqin said with a smile, "Don't worry, it's now our partner. It won't hurt anyone." Partner? Xinlong looked doubtful. Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Xingqin meaningfully and said, "If you have any questions, ask after we leave this place." Lu Xingqin jumped up and landed on the crocodile king's back. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and said, "Come up quickly." They looked at each other and jumped up one after another. The black dragon snake also became a meter long and coiled around Fatso's thigh. Next, Lu Xingqin stepped lightly on the crocodile king's back and said, "Bring us out of here, quickly!" Roar! The crocodile king roared and ran towards the swamp at full speed. Fatso frowned slightly and asked worriedly, "Lu Xingqin, are you sure it won't throw us into the swamp after we enter?" Lu Xingqin smiled and said, "Don't worry." Fatso looked at him and said telepathically, "Boss, don't believe his nonsense. We have to be careful." Qin Feiyang nodded his head without leaving a trace. He was prepared to bring everyone into the castle at any time. 10 meters, 8 meters, 5 meters, 3 meters. The swamp was getting closer and closer. Qin Feiyang's eyes became more and more silent. Dong! Finally, the crocodile king entered the swamp, but didn't do anything to hurt them. It swam straight ahead. Boom! In less than 10 breaths, there was a deafening sound behind them. Qin Feiyang and the others looked back and saw the entire island falling apart and sinking into the swamp quickly. Huge waves were rolling around. Looking at this scene, everyone was filled with lingering fear. Fortunately, Lu Xingqin came back in time. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Roar! At the same time, dragon crocodiles floated out of the swamp and roared continuously. There was a sense of sadness and joy in the roar, as if they were paying tribute to the crocodile king. Roar! But suddenly, a dragon crocodile saw Qin Feiyang and the others in the distance and roared immediately. With this roar, all the dragon crocodiles turned and stared at Qin Feiyang and the others. Their huge eyes were filled with anger and shock. Among them, 12 dragon crocodiles swam slowly to the front of the group and formed a line. They were more than 30 meters long. Obviously, they were crocodile kings. But their eyes weren't on Qin Feiyang and the others. They were on the crocodile king under their feet. Their eyes were filled with confusion. Roar! Suddenly, one of the crocodile kings roared at the crocodile king under their feet. It seemed to be asking why it betrayed everyone and why it helped those humans. But the crocodile king under their feet was silent. "Let's go!" Lu Xingqin shouted. The crocodile king under their feet immediately turned around and swam forward with them, splashing mud a few meters high. Roar! Right at this moment, the 12 crocodile kings roared together and led the crocodile group behind them to chase after Qin Feiyang and the others. Their eyes were filled with a terrifying, ferocious glint. "You dare to chase after us?" The corner of the fatty's mouth lifted as he chuckled. "Lord Fatty will make sure you don't return." Lu Xingqin reached out and stopped Fatso. He shook his head and said, "Don't kill them." Huh. Fatso was stunned. Lu Xingqin said, I promised it in advance that I wouldn't hurt its kind. As a person, I have to keep my word. Fatso glanced at the crocodile king under his feet and asked curiously, "How did you subdue it?" Lu Xingqian smiled and said, "I was lucky." "Tell me then." In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. In these 2 days, other than the group of crocodiles chasing after them, they didn't encounter any other ferocious beasts blocking their way. The fatty glanced at the front and turned to look at Qin Feiyang. He smiled mischievously and said, "Boss, you cultivate. We'll just watch." "Hee, if you don't cultivate now, you'll probably still be a 9-star combat emperor when we break through to the 5-star combat grandmaster level." Wolf King laughed sinisterly. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and looked at Dong Jinyang and the others. "You and the white-eyed wolf go to the castle. Lu Xingqian, Fatso, and the black dragon snake will be enough outside." Everyone nodded. Anyway, there was no danger now. Instead of staying outside, they might as well go to the castle and cultivate in seclusion. Moreover, if there were too many people, it would be a burden to the king crocodile. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the few of them and Wolf King disappeared without a trace. With Wolf King in charge, he wasn't afraid of Dongfeng Wuhen and Murong Xiong messing around in the castle. Then, Qin Feiyang sat cross-legged on the king crocodile's back, took out a battle chi pill and threw it into his mouth, closed his eyes and meditated. Time passed like this, day by day. "Lu Xingqian, quickly take a look and see if there's land in front of us." Early in the morning, Fatso suddenly exclaimed. Lu Xingqian was also cultivating during this period of time, so the guarding work fell on Fatso and the black dragon snake. Hearing Fatso's exclamation, Lu Xingqian opened his eyes, and a hint of joy suddenly appeared on his face. Hundreds of meters away, there was an undulating mountain ridge that stretched to the end of both sides, like a coastline by the sea. If that wasn't land, then what was it? "Finally, we've reached the end." Looking at the mountain ridge, Fatso and Lu Xingqian were filled with emotions. Looking back, the experience during this period of time was like a nightmare that they couldn't wake up from. After Lu Xingqian came back to his senses, he turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked in surprise, "Why didn't he react at all?" Fatso looked at Qin Feiyang seriously and said, "Looking at Boss's aura, he should be at the critical moment of breakthrough." Qin Feiyang's aura was sometimes strong and sometimes weak. When it was strong, it was close to a battle master. When it was weak, it was almost non-existent. "So fast?" Lu Xingqian was amazed. "Is it fast?" Fatso was stunned. "Nonsense. What was your cultivation level when you first came to the city? How long has it been? You have already surpassed me, and I'm only a 7-star combat emperor now." Lu Xingqian shook his head. How could there be such a huge gap between people? Fatso suddenly became proud and laughed. "We can't help it. We're all geniuses." "Well, it's too hurtful to interact with geniuses like you." "It seems like I'll have to keep a distance from you in the future," Lu Xingqian said helplessly. The black dragon snake suddenly said, "I'll interrupt and ask you a few questions." Both of them looked at it in confusion. The black dragon snake looked at them and asked, "When you two met, what was the difference in cultivation level?" Lu Xingqian said, "I was a 5-star combat emperor at that time, and I had just broken through to the Battle King realm." "What?" The black dragon snake's eyes widened. The difference in cultivation level was so big, but they had surpassed them. It looked at Fatso and asked suspiciously, "How did you do it?" Before Fatso could answer, Lu Xingqian said, "They have all opened the gate of potential. How could it not be fast?" The gate of potential. The black dragon snake was dumbfounded. After a long time, it regained its senses and looked at Lu Xingqian, shaking its head. "You're really an idiot." Lu Xingqian almost spat out a mouthful of blood. One had to know. His talent was one of the best in the spiritual state, but he didn't expect that he would be reduced to an idiot. His heart was hit hard. Let's not talk about it anymore. If I continue, I'm afraid I'll be worse than an idiot. He sighed deeply and looked up at the mountain ridge in front of him. An inexplicable light flashed in the depths of his eyes. At the same time, Fatso turned his head to look at the swamp behind him. The 12 king crocodile and the group of crocodiles had also chased them here. It could be said that they were persevering and their spirit was commendable. However, as long as they went ashore, these fierce crocodiles wouldn't pose any threat to them. The 12 king crocodiles seemed to have realized this, so they were desperately chasing after them. They wanted to stop Qin Feiyang and the others before they went ashore. However, at their current speed, it was obviously impossible. Land was close at hand. Fatso and Lu Xingqian already had a victorious smile on their faces. Boom! However, at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly surged from somewhere in the mountain range. Following closely, a bright, flaming battle aura emerged from the mountain ridge. It carried a monstrous, murderous aura and charged towards Qin Feiyang and the others. Who is it? Fatso, Lu Xingqian, and the black dragon snake's expressions suddenly changed, because that aura was even stronger than that of a one-star battle ancestor, and to intercept them at this time, it was obvious that they wanted to kill them. However, Qin Feiyang didn't move at all. His eyes were still closed. However, the king crocodile under their feet was disturbed and stopped, not knowing what to do. Fatso shouted, "Don't be afraid. Continue forward. Fat Lord, I want to see who is borrowing courage from the heavens to intercept us." Because once they stopped, the crocodile group behind them would catch up, and it would be even more troublesome. After spending some time together, the king crocodile had a good understanding of Fatso's strength. Hearing Fatso's words, it immediately calmed down and continued to swim towards the shore. Boom! That flaming battle aura was murderous. Wherever it passed, huge waves of dozens of feet high were set off in the swamp. Humph! Fatso snorted coldly. He raised his hand and pointed in the air. The black dragon battle aura roared out and collided with the flaming battle aura. Boom! At that moment, 2 streams of battle qi exploded in the air, creating a terrifying wave of destructive qi that surged out in all directions with an earth-shattering momentum. Seeing that the situation was not good, the black dragon snake hurriedly activated its battle aura and formed a black barrier to protect the king crocodile and Qin Feiyang. Because of that, the king crocodile's speed did not slow down at all. At the same time, there was a sound of surprise in the mountain ridge. It seemed that they were surprised by Fatso's strength. Fatso stared at the place where the flaming battle aura emerged. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he said, "Lu Xingqian, don't you feel that the aura is a little familiar?" Familiar? Lu Xingqian was stunned. After a careful analysis, he nodded and said, "It is indeed familiar. I should have met it before. But who is it?" "Not bad. It hasn't been long, and your strength has improved so much. But you're not the only one who has improved. Try this move of mine again." Phoenix Fire. At that moment, there was a sinister laughter in the mountain ridge. Boom! Then, in the mountain ridge, a wave of fire rushed to the sky and shone in all directions. The scale of the flame was not big, but the outline was like a soaring phoenix. It swooped down towards Qin Feiyang and the others. This voice, Fatso raised his eyebrows. The voice sounded familiar to him. "It's him." Lu Xingqian suddenly said, his eyes shining. "Who?" Fatso was surprised. Lu Xingqian said, "Kong region's Feng Wuxia." Back then, when everyone was imprisoned by the people of the Kong region, he was also inside. Thus, when he heard the voice, he remembered. So it's him. Fatso suddenly realized and frowned. But Fat Lord remembers he is a 1-star War Master. You, who hadn't even reached the War Master level back then, have already broken through to the 2-star War Master. Is it strange for him to break through from the 1-star War Master to the 2-star War Master? Lu Xingqian asked. Fatso was startled, then laughed. Fat Lord is a peerless genius. How can he compare? Lu Xingqian immediately rolled his eyes and said in a deep voice, Don't talk nonsense. This Phoenix Fire is definitely a high-grade battle art. We can't be careless. High-grade battle art? Chapter 6:24. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Fatso immediately activated the dragon transformation art and transformed into a dragon warrior. His terrifying aura shook the entire area. The group of crocodiles that were chasing from behind couldn't help but stop. They looked at Fatty with fear in their eyes. At this moment, the flaming battle chi that was shaped like a phoenix had already arrived above Qin Feiyong and the others. However, Fatso only waved his hand gently, and the flaming battle chi dissipated into nothingness. Feng Wuxia, who was hiding in the mountains, widened his eyes in shock when he saw this scene. He defeated his superior battle art with a wave of his hand. Wasn't he too powerful? Feng Wuxia, don't run away today if you have the guts. Fatso stood with his hands behind his back. His clothes and hair fluttered in the wind as he pursed his lips in disdain. Needless to say, at this very moment he was quite imposing. Lu Xingqian glanced at Fatso and then at Qin Feiyong, who had his eyes closed. He couldn't help but sigh. Fatso and Wolf King, who were by Qin Feiyong's side, had already grown up. Furthermore, with his current strength, no one in the 9 great prefectures could match him. Once Qin Feiyong broke through to the War Master realm, there would be no suspense about the outcome of this 9-states war. Silence reigned in the mountain range. Feng Wuxia also didn't make any movements. But suddenly, a young man with an evil aura walked out of the forest on the shore of the swamp and entered the sight of Fatso and the others. Who else could it be but Feng Wuxia? He stood on a huge rock on the shore with his arms crossed in front of his chest. He glanced at Qin Feiyong, Lu Xingqian, and the black dragon snake before his gaze landed on Fatso. A scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at with new eyes. Your current strength is really beyond my expectations. Even though Fatso had displayed unparalleled strength, Feng Wuxia didn't seem to be afraid. Fatso said disdainfully, Your strength is nothing. Really? Although my strength might be slightly inferior to yours, it might not be that easy for you all to reach the shore today. Feng Wuxia smiled. You? Fatso smiled contemptuously. He definitely won't be able to, but don't forget that the Kong state still has a lot of experts. Since he's here, the others must be nearby as well. Also, Yuzhou has allied with them. You've seen Wan Qiu's strength with your own eyes. He's definitely not an ordinary person. That's why we can't underestimate them. Lu Xingqian whispered. What does it matter? If 1 Fat Lord comes, I'll kill 1. If 2 come, I'll kill 2 Fat Lord. If they dare to come forward, Fat Lord will kill them all. Fatso said domineeringly. Ugh! Lu Xingqian was startled. He then shook his head helplessly. This guy was too full of himself. Next, he turned his head to look at Feng Wuxia and frowned. We didn't find any traces of you on the way, but how did you know that we would come here and ambush us here in advance? The swamp was extremely huge. They definitely didn't take the same route. Since the route was different, the location of the shore must be different. But now, Feng Wuxia was blocking their way. Was it a coincidence? Well, some time ago we met a pair of siblings. They said that they could predict your location. So during this time, I've been waiting for you here. I didn't expect that you would really come. Feng Wuxia said. Siblings? Lu Xingqian furrowed his brows. Who were these siblings? How did they have such an ability? Fatso sneered. So what? Fat Lord, I'd like to see how you're going to stop us from going ashore. King Crocodile, don't stop. At this moment, the shore was close at hand. With King Crocodile's speed, it would only take a few blinks of an eye. If he can't, can I? But at this moment, a cold voice sounded. A red-haired young man rushed out of the forest and landed beside Feng Wuxia. Wan Qiu. Lu Xingqian's pupils constricted. What he was afraid of really happened. However, it wasn't over yet. For more people appeared one after another. They were all familiar faces. 3 of them were from Serene State. The last one was from Kong State. These 4 people had fought with Qin Feiyang and the others before. They were all 1-star combat ancestors. In that battle, Kong State and Serene State suffered heavy losses. Only 6 1-star combat ancestors and 3 2-star combat ancestors were left. The rest were all wiped out. Now these people were all here. Only Feng Hua and the pair of sisters were left. Where are the 2 girls and Feng Hua? Why don't I see them? Are they dead? Fatty was not worried at all. He had nothing to fear. Hearing the words girls, Feng Wuxia's eyes suddenly turned cold. Watch your mouth. Wan Qiu and the other 4 1-star battle sex faces were also as gloomy as water, filled with dense hatred. Originally, they were confident of victory in this 9-state war. However, they didn't expect that they would almost be wiped out in that one battle. They had wanted to settle this score for a long time. You're angry? Don't tell me you like those 2 girls. And Wan Qiu, do you think you can strategize just because you have a perfect auxiliary battle art? Last time, they were still slaughtered by us. Fatso's face was full of ridicule. The angrier these people were, the more comfortable he felt. Cheap mouth. Killing intent surged in Wan Qiu's eyes, and his aura suddenly exploded. Fatso raised his eyebrows. Wan Qiu's aura was that of a 3-star combat ancestor. The King Crocodile behind them was suddenly frightened. Fatso said, "Don't be afraid." The King Crocodile calmed down and continued to rush to the shore, but its speed was very slow. You can even tame the fierce beasts in the swamp. You have some ability. However, don't even think about going ashore today. Wan Qiu's eyes were extremely cold. As he spoke, he waved his hand and a bloody light rushed into the sky, forming a sea of blood that floated in the sky. Moreover, there was also a terrifying murderous aura that surged out in all directions with the force of an avalanche. The group of crocodiles behind Qin Feiyang and the others turned around and fled without hesitation. Their eyes were filled with fear. This was because they couldn't interfere in the battle here. If they stayed, they would only die. Although they hated Qin Feiyang and the others, as well as the King Crocodile who betrayed them, they valued their lives more. However, Fatso's expression didn't change as he calmly looked at the sea of blood. Hellstone Beast. Wan Qiu roared, and the sea of blood that floated in the sky suddenly tumbled. Blood waves surged to the sky. Roar. Suddenly, a roar exploded in the sea of blood, resounding through the heavens and the earth. Following closely, a giant beast rushed out of the sea of blood, and its ferocious aura immediately shrouded all directions. This giant beast seemed to be made of rocks and was dozens of feet tall. It was like a towering mountain in the sky, and its entire body was filled with a violent and bloody aura. In a trance, it really looked like a demon from hell. Very strong. Lu Xingqian's pupils constricted. Fatso said, "No matter how strong it is, it's just a superior battle technique. Fat Lord is enough here. Go back and watch my boss, lest he accidentally falls into the swamp." Lu Xingqian nodded and immediately ran to Qin Feiyang's side, ready for battle. The blood debt from back, then, can only be repaid with the blood of all of you. Wan Qiu's body was surrounded by a murderous aura. As he waved his hand, the Hellstone Beast thumped its chest and stomped its feet. It roared into the sky and charged towards Fatso. "Fat Lord, I'll return those words to you." Fatso, also retracted his gaze and looked at Wan Qiu. His eyes were as sharp as a blade, sharp and threatening. The Hellstone beast charged towards Fatso in an instant. Its huge fist was accompanied by gusts of wind, and its murderous aura was piercing to the bone. Boom! Fatso suddenly raised his arm, and his palm collided with the Hellstone beast's fist. Immediately, black dragon battle aura gushed out from his palms. Boom! With an earth-shattering sound, the Hellstone beast instantly disintegrated. But at the same time, Fatso's body also trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. How could the king crocodile under his feet withstand such a terrifying force? Fatso stood on its back, and its back broke on the spot. Its huge body sank into the swamp. "Hold on!" Fatso shouted. "Roar!" The king crocodile roared, forcibly stabilized its body, and rushed towards the shore without holding back. It was not stupid. If it continued to stay in the swamp, it would be very disadvantageous for Qin Feiyang and the others and for itself. So it might as well go all out and rush ashore. Seeing this, Feng Wuxia raised his eyebrows and shouted, "Stop them from going ashore!" The 4 one-star battle ancestors, as well as Feng Wuxia himself, immediately performed their battle arts, and they were all their strongest battle arts. Wan Qiu was indifferent at this moment. He looked at Fatso with a dumbfounded expression. His face was filled with disbelief. Boom! 5 great battle arts appeared in an instant. Feng Wuxia's battle art was not the phoenix fire from before, but the fire beacon that had killed Fu Shan. Its aura was extremely shocking. A bunch of ants want to overturn the heavens. Fatty sneered. 5 black dragon battle auras roared out and crushed the 5 battle arts as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Feng Wuxia and the other 4 immediately vomited blood. In the form of a dragon warrior, Fatso's cultivation and defense had increased to a 6-star battle ancestor. In other words, with a casual wave of his hand, he had the battle power of a perfect battle art. Feng Wuxia and the other 4's strength was not bad, but compared to the current Fatso, they were too inferior. Boom! The king crocodile finally rushed ashore. It was also at this moment Wan Qiu came back to his senses and shouted, "Retreat!" Feng Wuxia and the other 4 looked at him in surprise, but Wan Qiu did not explain, because Fatso had already jumped down from the king crocodile's back. There was no time to explain. With a wave of his hand, he swept up Feng Wuxia and the other 4, then turned around and used the perfect auxiliary battle art to rush into the forest without looking back. "Weren't you very arrogant before? Why are you running away now?" Fatso's eyes were filled with disdain. He raised his arm and pointed his index finger in the air. A stream of black dragon battle chi gushed out from his fingertip and blasted into the forest. With a loud bang, the ground hundreds of meters in front of them was instantly razed to the ground. A hole was blasted in the mountain ridge in front of them. Wan Qiu and the others were also sent flying by the terrifying aura. Blood spurted out of their mouths, and their faces were filled with shock. What's going on? How long has it been? His strength has actually reached such a level? The 4 one-star battle ancestors got up from the ground in a sorry state and roared angrily. Feng Wuxia said in a deep voice, "According to my guess, that Fatso should have mastered the perfect slaughter battle art." Wan Qiu said, "It's not a guess, it's the truth." What? The 4 of them trembled both physically and mentally as waves surged in their hearts. But don't worry. Although his perfect battle art can increase his cultivation and defense, according to my observation, it can't increase his speed. If we want to leave, he can't stop us. What's more, if we really fight, I'm not afraid of him. Wan Qiu said, his eyes extremely sharp. "Since you're so confident, why are you running away?" Before he finished speaking, Chapter 6:25. The six of them turned around and saw Fatso walking towards them step by step. Black dragon battle chi swirled around his body, making him look like a real dragon. Running away? Wan Qiu turned around and looked at Fatso with disdain in his eyes. Fatso chuckled. A 3-star combat grandmaster and a perfect auxiliary combat art. If we really fight, Fat Lord might not even be your match. Good that you know. Wan Qiu sneered and said to Feng Wuxia and the others through telepathy, "You guys will only get in the way if you stay here. Leave first." The reason why he left earlier was to protect the 5 of them. Although he was confident that he could fight Fatso, he knew that there was an unstable factor in his opponent's strength. This factor was Qin Feiyang. With the unfathomable Qin Feiyang and the powerful Fatso, anything could happen. A 1-star combat grandmaster glanced behind Fatso and said, "Senior brother Wan Qiu, why don't you stall Fatso here? We'll go to the back and kill Qin Feiyang and the others." Wan Qiu paused. "I think so. I observed carefully just now. Qin Feiyang is a 9-star combat emperor. The other is a 7-star combat emperor. The crocodile is a 1-star combat grandmaster. And only the snake is a 2-star combat grandmaster. As for the others from the spiritual state, we haven't seen them. They should have died in the swamp. With our strength, getting rid of them is as easy as flipping our hands." The other 3 1-star combat grandmasters also said, "But don't forget that Qin Feiyang has an ancient castle. The others from the spiritual state might not be dead and are hiding inside." Feng Wuxia said to himself. He didn't agree with this suggestion as it was too risky. Even if they are hiding in the castle, we can just retreat. That's right. With our speed and strength, they can't stop us. Plus, you're a 2-star combat grandmaster now. With your Fire Phoenix battle soul, it's more than enough to deal with them. The 4 1-star battle ancestors said. Feng Wuxia pondered for a moment and said to himself, "I can give it a try, but if something goes wrong, I must not fight and retreat immediately. Don't worry, we all cherish our lives." There was a hint of a smile in their eyes, but it was a very cold smile. "Since all of you agree, I won't object. But I have a suggestion. Let's attack Qin Feiyang first. Because I just noticed that his aura is not normal. He should be at the critical moment of a breakthrough. You all know that we can't be distracted at this time. Otherwise, we might fall short of success." Wan Qiu transmitted his voice. Fatso looked at them playfully and said, "You guys are exchanging flirtatious glances over there. Are you guys trying to deal with my boss?" The 6 of them felt their hearts tremble. How could he guess that? Fatso's insight was truly astonishing. "You're thinking too much." Wan Qiu sneered and shouted, "Retreat!" Feng Wuxia and the others immediately turned around and flew towards the mountain ridge. "Am I thinking too much?" Fatso muttered. He did not stop the 5 of them, but his eyes were somewhat thought-provoking. Suddenly, his gaze turned cold as he shouted, "Come on, let's settle the score from before today." "That's exactly what I was thinking." Wan Qiu's tone was also extremely cold. Boom! The 2 of them directly clashed. Wan Qiu had a perfect auxiliary battle art, so in terms of speed he had an absolute advantage. If it were anyone else today, even if they had a perfect slaughter battle art, they would still be at a disadvantage. But Fatso was different. His dragon transformation art was not something that an ordinary perfect battle art could compare to. With a casual wave of his hand or a casual lift of his foot, he had the battle strength of a 6-star battle ancestor. He did not need time to evolve his battle art at all. Moreover, he did not need to compete with Wan Qiu in speed at all. He just stood there and countered his moves. For a moment, the 2 of them were locked in a fierce battle, neither of them having the upper hand. As for Feng Wuxia and the others, after leaving Fatso's line of sight, they turned around and went around the battlefield, rushing towards Qin Feiyang and the others. Feng Wuxie's eyes flashed coldly as he sent a voice transmission to the other four. Be sure to kill them in one blow later. As long as they got rid of Qin Feiyang, this unstable factor, the others in the spiritual state were nothing to worry about. On the shore of the swamp, the king crocodile was lying in the grass, recuperating. Lu Xingqian stood beside the king crocodile, looking at Fatso and Wan Qiu with worry in his eyes. Black Dragon Snake, can you go and help him? If the Black Dragon Snake took action together with Fatso, it would be easy to kill Wan Qiu. Help him? Not interested. The Black Dragon Snake was disdainful. Lu Xingqian looked helpless. As for Qin Feiyang, the appearance of Wan Qiu and the others did not affect him at all. He was still sitting cross-legged on the king crocodile's back. Time passed breath by breath. After 10 breaths, boom! Suddenly, 5 powerful auras emerged from the nearby forest. Then, 5 different battle arts whizzed towards Qin Feiyang. Lu Xingqian was shocked. He turned around and immediately saw a familiar battle art. It was Feng Wuxie's flowing fire of the phoenix. Then, he looked past the battle arts and looked at the forest behind him. He saw Feng Wuxie and the other 4 rush out of the forest, full of murderous intent. At the same time, Fatso, who was fighting with Wan Qiu, turned around and looked back. Just as Fat Lord expected, they will return to kill Boss. But who will kill who? I'm looking forward to it. He muttered to himself. While fighting with Wan Qiu, he sneered, You guys are really despicable. Haven't you heard of the saying? The winner is the king, and the loser is the bandit. Wan Qiu didn't care. At the same time, he attacked with all his strength and firmly restrained Fatso, not allowing Fatso to escape. But he didn't know that Fatso had no intention of saving Qin Feiyang and the others. In the blink of an eye, on the shore, seeing Feng Wuxie and the other 4, Lu Xingqian immediately shouted angrily, Is this the style of the Kong state and you state? But the 5 of them ignored him. They only had Qin Feiyang in their eyes. Naive, Lu Xingqian shook his head. Although Fatso wasn't here, there was a terrifying beast emperor here. Clang! The Black Dragon Snake attacked, and it decisively took out its reverse scale. The giant reverse scale flickered with a cold glint like a sharp blade as it slashed across the sky and collided with the 5 battle arts. Boom! With a loud bang, the 4 one-star battle arts were destroyed on the spot. Blood spurted out of their mouths. Feng Wuxie's phoenix fire and the reverse scale were in a stalemate for a moment before disintegrating. Cracks appeared on the reverse scale, but they were instantly repaired. How is this possible? Feng Wuxie and the others were stunned. They knew that the Black Dragon Snake was a 2-star battle ancestor, but they never expected it to be so strong. What the hell was that scale? It could destroy their battle arts without breaking? It was only at this moment that they realized what the pondering look in the fatty's eyes meant. It was mocking them for overestimating themselves. At the same time, the Black Dragon Snake looked at the 5 of them in disdain and said, You trash dare to sneak attack us? You must be tired of living. Let's go. Feng Wuxie came back to his senses and made a prompt decision to retreat. Since you're here, don't leave. The Black Dragon Snake's eyes shone fiercely. Clang! The reverse scale let out an ear-piercing sound and charged toward the 5 of them like lightning with an apocalyptic sharpness. Its speed was even faster than the 5 of them running away. You guys go, I'll stop it. Feng Wuxie saw that the situation was bad and suddenly turned around. His long hair fluttered in the air as he roared, Fire Beacon City! Above his head, a sea of fire suddenly appeared. In the sea of fire, 2 huge cities floated, as if 2 ancient demon cities had appeared, releasing a vast aura. Boom! The first city fell with a loud bang, causing the ground to tremble. Clang! The first city collided with the reverse scale and was in a stalemate. The city was torn apart and cracks appeared on the reverse scale. But the black dragon snake was not afraid at all. It continued to control the reverse scale and attacked the second city, because it was confident that before it collided with the second city, the cracks on the reverse scale would be repaired. However, Lu Xingqian roared at this moment, "Don't fight it head-on, dodge it first!" When Feng Wuxia and Fu Shan fought, he was at the scene, so he knew about the fire beacon city. The speed of the second city's descent was several times faster than the first city. At this speed, the second city could collide with the reverse scale before it repaired itself. At that time, the reverse scale would definitely shatter. Once the reverse scale was destroyed, the black dragon snake's cultivation would immediately fall to a one-star battle ancestor. At that time, not only would it not be able to kill Feng Wuxia and the other four, but it would also be killed by them. But the black dragon snake did not know this. Hearing Lu Xingqian's reminder, it wanted to take back the reverse scale, but it was too late. Boom! The second city came crashing down. A loud explosion resounded through the sky. Without any suspense, the reverse scale was instantly shattered and the black dragon snake's aura suddenly plummeted. However, that city was also shattered by the reverse scale. It could be considered a mutual destruction. After shattering the reverse scale, Feng Wuxia was ready to turn around and leave. Lu Xingqian also breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Feng Wuxia left, the crisis would naturally be gone. But after taking 2 steps, Feng Wuxia suddenly stopped and turned to look at the black dragon snake. His eyes filled with surprise. Obviously, he noticed the abnormality of the black dragon snake. Battle Soul open. Suddenly, behind Feng Wuxia, a wave of fire rushed into the sky. A fire phoenix flapped its huge wings and floated in the sky. Although he did not know what was going on, his experience told him that the destruction of the scale had caused a serious injury to the black dragon snake. At his cultivation level, he naturally knew how to grasp the opportunity, so he did not hesitate to open his battle soul and give Qin Feiyang and the others a fatal blow. Innate divine power, heavenly phoenix eye. Following Feng Wuxia's cold shout, the fire phoenix closed its eyes and suddenly opened them again. 2 bright beams of light burst out of its eyes, exuding a destructive aura, and charged towards Qin Feiyang and the others. "Dodge!" Lu Xingqian shouted and hurriedly dodged to the side. The black dragon snake and the king crocodile were also shocked and ran for their lives. Little bug, do you know now? No matter who you are facing, you cannot underestimate them. If you were careful just now, you would not have suffered such a big loss. But at this moment, a calm voice sounded. Qin Feiyang, Lu Xingqian, the king crocodile, and the black dragon snake were overjoyed. Boom! At the same time, Qin Feiyang, who was sitting cross-legged on the king crocodile's back, suddenly unleashed his aura. He was now a 1-star combat grandmaster. "I've finally broken through," Qin Feiyang muttered to himself. He suddenly opened his eyes, and 2 cold rays of light shot out of them. "Now that this fellow is awake, it'll be fine." Lu Xingqian smiled. The king crocodile and the black dragon snake did not run anymore. Qin Feiyang stood up and leaped down from the king crocodile's back. He looked up at Feng Wuxia and said, "The siblings are amazing for being able to predict our location. However, I don't know if they've foreseen that all of you will die today." His voice was calm, but it was filled with a majestic aura that sent chills down one's spine. As soon as he finished speaking, flames shot up from behind him. The 9-leaf fire lotus had appeared. Clang! 2 leaves fell off and shot toward the 2 beams of light. Explode! When they were near, Qin Feiyang spoke indifferently. The 2 fire lotus leaves suddenly exploded, giving birth to a destructive power. The 2 beams of light instantly dissipated into nothingness. Indeed, the fire phoenix is a rare battle soul. However, it's nothing compared to me. As soon as Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he no longer cared about the fire phoenix. He used the phantom steps and charged toward Feng Wuxia. We'll see. Feng Wuxia's eyes gleamed. In the end, he chose to avoid the attack. He turned around and left, but he did not recall his battle soul. Chirp! The fire phoenix let out a high-pitched cry. It flapped its wings and charged toward Qin Feiyang ferociously. Feng Wuxia wanted to use the fire phoenix to buy him enough time to leave. However, he did not know. He would regret this decision for the rest of his life. Qin Feiyang stopped in his tracks. He looked at Feng Wuxia's back and said softly, "Since you've left your battle soul behind, don't even think about taking it back." After he finished speaking, Wolf King appeared out of thin air. Qin Feiyang said, "Strip him of his battle soul." "Easy." Wolf King chuckled. A huge golden beast appeared behind him. He shouted, "Devour!" Immediately, the golden beast opened its mouth wide. A gust of wind rose in this place. The fire phoenix flew toward the mouth uncontrollably. "What's going on?" Feng Wuxia, who was fleeing, was horrified. He was shocked to discover that he had lost contact with his battle soul. He turned around immediately. When he saw the golden beast, his face turned pale immediately. The fire phoenix was about to enter the golden beast's mouth. However, at this moment, a terrifying battle chi shot out and struck the fire phoenix. Boom! The fire phoenix was annihilated on the spot. "Who's there? Come out and die." Chapter 6:26. It's us. A bone-piercing, cold voice rang out. 3 young men and women rushed out from the forest. It was Feng Hua and the twin sisters. The 4 one-star battle ancestors who had escaped earlier also followed behind the 3 of them, their eyes filled with hatred. Qin Feiyang was surprised. The auras emitted by Feng Hua and the twin sisters were much stronger than before. It was obvious that they had broken through a small realm like Feng Wuxia. Feng Hua was a 2-star battle ancestor. The twin sisters were both 3-star battle ancestors. Xuanning looked at Wolf King, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "You damn pervert, today I will definitely dig out your eyeballs and feed them to the dogs." Qin Feiyang smiled and asked, "Are you that confident?" Feng Wuxia laughed. "On our side, there are 2 3-star battle ancestors, 2 2-star battle ancestors, and 4 1-star battle ancestors. What do you have to fight us?" "Is that so? Then I'll get rid of those small fries first." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he immediately took a step forward and headed straight for the 4 1-star battle ancestors. "Don't even think about it." Xuanning and Xue Ruo shouted coldly at the same time and blocked in front of Qin Feiyang. Their pale golden hair was like a waterfall. Their clothes fluttered, and their eyes were incomparably sharp. "Little Qin Zi, leave these 2 girls to me." Wolf King roared and instantly turned into a muscular wolf that was more than 10 meters tall. His millstone-sized eyes were filled with a terrifying, ferocious light. "No need." Qin Feiyang shook his head, because he wanted to see how strong he was after breaking through to 1-star battle ancestor. Arrogant. Arrogant. Damn pervert. Originally, when the sisters heard that Wolf King was going to make a move, they were rather nervous. This was because Wolf King's methods were somewhat unfathomable, especially his battle soul. But they never thought that Qin Feiyang would reject Wolf King's help. It seemed like this was a good thing. He no longer had to worry about Wolf King's battle soul. However, looking at it from another angle, Qin Feiyang's behavior was simply naked contempt for them. Therefore, they were very angry. I'll say it one last time. I didn't peek at you guys bathing. Qin Feiyang frowned impatiently. He raised both his hands and slammed them down. You dare to do it, but you don't dare to admit it. You are not a man. The 2 sisters firmly believed that Qin Feiyang was a peeping Tom. The aura of a 3-star war master completely erupted as they extended their jade-like hands towards Qin Feiyang without showing any signs of weakness. Boom! However, on the eve of their meeting, a golden character appeared on Qin Feiyang's palms. Return formula. Ah! The 4 palms collided, and the 2 sisters were sent flying. Blood gushed out of their mouths, and their faces were deathly pale. Xuening Xuerua. Feng Wuxie and Feng roared as they activated their battle arts and charged towards Qin Feiyang angrily. Even they can't stop me, let alone you guys. I'll kill those 4 in 3 breaths. Qin Feiyang pointed at the 4 one-star War Masters with a sharp gaze. Run. Feng! His pupils contracted as he shouted at the 4. The 4 of them turned back because they saw the sisters coming. They thought that with the sisters' strength, Feng Hua and Feng Wuxie, they would definitely be able to kill Qin Feiyang and avenge their humiliation. However, they never expected that in just 1 round, the sisters would be sent flying by Qin Feiyang. Seeing the scene, they were already panicking. Now that they heard Feng Hua's cold shout, they didn't dare to hesitate and turned to run. But just as they were running away, Qin Feiyang waved his hand and golden light burst out. Boom! Feng Wuxie and Feng Wuxie's battle arts changed sides and attacked the 2 of them. Their expressions changed drastically as they hurriedly dodged to the side. The 2 battle arts blasted onto the ground, causing dust and dirt to fly everywhere, forming a huge crater. Although Feng Wuxie and Feng Wuxie had dodged, they were still sent flying by the shockwave. Qin Feiyang looked at the 2 of them and raised his hand. Ultimate destruction. But the target was not Feng Wuxie and Feng Hua, but the 4 one-star War Masters. An invisible force roared out, exuding the power to destroy the world. Feeling the terrifying killing move approaching quickly, the 4 of them turned pale with fear, wishing that they could grow a few pairs of wings. Spread out. Seeing this, Feng Wuxie and Feng Wuxie were also extremely anxious, but it was too late to save them now. So, instead of being wiped out by Qin Feiyang, it was better to let them spread out. Maybe 1 or 2 could be saved. Hearing this, the 4 of them didn't dare to hesitate and immediately spread out. In the blink of an eye, boom! The invisible force arrived, causing the earth to collapse and the ancient trees to shatter. This area was directly razed to the ground. The 4 of them were also instantly drowned by the terrifying shockwave, and their screams resounded through the clouds. Are they dead? Feng Hua and Feng Wuxie looked at that place anxiously. Xuening and her sister also ran over, their faces full of worry and anger. Brother, come and take a look too. Are they dead? Wolf King chuckled and waved his claws. A gust of wind appeared out of thin air, sweeping up the dust and ashes in the sky and rushing into the distance. Everything was clear in front of their eyes. They saw the 4 one-star War Masters lying quietly in a pool of blood, their bodies a mess of flesh and blood, and they could no longer sense any signs of life. Obviously, they were dead. This is impossible. Looking at the 4 corpses, Feng Wuxie and the other 3 clenched their hands tightly, their faces full of disbelief. They clearly didn't hit them head-on. How could they die? Wolf King said contemptuously. For little Qin Zi, who has mastered 3 perfect battle arts, isn't it easy to kill them? 3 perfect battle arts. The 4 of them trembled. Who was this Qin Feiyang? Not only did Fatso beside him have perfect battle arts, but he also mastered 3. Oh my God! How could they live like this? Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Okay, the hindrance has been eliminated. Now it's your turn. Xue Ruo suddenly turned to stare at Qin Feiyang and hissed. You're a madman, a demon! Yes, I'm a madman. Do you remember what I said to you last time? The show has just begun. Now it's time for you to pay the price for everything you've done. None of you should think about living. Qin Feiyang's eyes were filled with murderous intent, and a red sword energy appeared. Clang! 10 sword shadows appeared out of thin air. Guiyuan sword technique. Each sword shadow had the power of a perfect battle art. Let's see how many of them you can block. Qin Feiyong waved his hand, and a sword shadow with a monstrous sharpness slashed towards the 4 of them. Don't be complacent too early. Feng Hua pushed Feng Wuxie and the other 2 aside and took a step forward, his entire body emitting a bright golden light. Golden body technique. With a low roar, his skin, eyes, and long hair all turned golden, as if they were plated with a layer of gold leaf. Following that, he raised his fist and actually punched the sword shadow with his bare hands. Clang! The sword shadow and fist collided, and an ear-splitting metallic sound exploded. Feng Hua's current body was as if it was cast from divine iron, causing Qin Feiyong to be rather surprised. The first sword shadow dissipated. On Feng Hua's fist there was only a small scratch, which showed how astonishing his defense was. Of course, this was all thanks to Feng Hua's cultivation. Although the golden body technique was only a high-grade battle art, his 2-star war master cultivation made up for his shortcomings. Although the Guiyuan sword technique was a perfect battle art, Qin Feiyong was only a 1-star war master. The 2 of them could be said to be about the same. However, to Qin Feiyong, Feng Hua's strength did not pose much of a threat to him. This was because the number of Guiyuan sword technique S would increase as one's cultivation increased. War Master Realm could condense 10 sword shadows. War Emperor Realm, 20 sword shadows. Now that he had broken through to the War Master Realm, he could condense 30 sword shadows. These 30 sword shadows were equivalent to 30 great killing moves. Could Feng Hua withstand them? The second sword shadow descended. Feng Hua relied on the powerful defense of his body to shatter the sword shadow, but the wound on his fist became bigger and bigger. By the 4th sword shadow, his wound was so deep that his bones could be seen, and blood was flowing out. Moreover, his entire arm was lacerated. "I'll take your life now," Qin Feiyong shouted coldly, and the remaining 5 sword shadows all descended in an instant. A sense of fear rose in Feng Hua's heart. He did not dare to take it head-on. This was because these 5 sword shadows were enough to break through his golden body's defense and shatter his bones. Previous chapter, next chapter, boom. At this moment, Feng Wuxie moved. He landed beside Feng Hua in 1 step and shouted at him, "Attack!" Fire Beacon City. Wind Shock Slash. The 2 great 2-star war sect experts joined forces and did not hold back at all. High up in the sky, the sea of fire churned and waves of fire surged. 2 huge cities stood tall and majestic, emitting a vast might. Below, a huge golden sword was lying horizontally in the air. It was more than 100 feet long and released tens of thousands of sword chi. Its sharpness was oppressive. "Qin Feiyong, let us tell you now, in front of our Kong state, you do not have the capital to be arrogant. Kill." The 2 of them shouted. The 2 cities, the huge golden sword immediately smashed towards the 5 sword shadows. Boom! Crack! It was as if comets had collided, erupting with boundless light. The destructive aura was earth-shattering. The nearby mountains continued to collapse, and the flowers and trees were turned into ashes. In the blink of an eye, the thousands of meters of land was like a land of death. Not a single blade of grass was left. At the same time, 2 screams rang out. Feng Hua and Feng Hua flew out like meteors. Their bodies were covered in blood and dyed the sky red. Qin Feiyong was also constantly retreating. His face was pale, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. But compared to Feng Hua and Feng Wuxie, his injuries were nothing. Bang! He stepped on the ground and stabilized his body. He no longer paid attention to Feng Wuxie and Feng Hua and shifted his gaze to Xuanning and Feng Hua. The 2 sisters were also filled with anger. You are both 3-star war sect experts. Don't disappoint me. Qin Feiyang wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His body shook and a red sword qi broke out from his body and rushed into the sky. Clang! In the blink of an eye, 20 sword shadows were formed. Each sword shadow released a terrifying sharpness. For a moment, the world seemed to be filled with countless, invisible blades. The sisters' skin was aching. The two girls could not help but feel apprehensive. Although their cultivations surpassed Qin Feiyang's by 2 small realms, the methods that Qin Feiyang displayed at this moment were truly too shocking, causing them to involuntarily feel panic. But Qin Feiyang's contemptuous gaze and disdainful tone made them extremely angry. Qin Feiyang, don't look down on us women. Frost arts. The two girls' gazes turned cold. As they waved their hands, a cold wind blew and the temperature plummeted. Even the sky was fluttering with heavy snow. In the blink of an eye, the place had turned into a snowy glacier. The cold current was bone-chilling. Qin Feiyang's eyes were filled with astonishment as he asked, "Both of you have grasped the same battle art?" "Yes. Although the frost arts is only a high-grade battle art, the effect of the two of us combined is infinitely close to a perfect battle art." The tone of the two sisters was like the temperature at the moment. It carried a bone-chilling coldness. "Nothing is too strange in this world," Qin Feiyang mumbled. However, with the cultivation of a 3-star battle ancestor and the frost arts infinitely close to a perfect battle art, this pair of sisters might really be a tough nut to crack. Clang! With a wave of his hand, 20 sword shadows whizzed out and locked onto the two sisters. Frost arts freeze! The two girls looked at each other and shouted coldly at the same time. The snowflakes floating in the air rushed towards the 20 sword shadows. In less than 3 breaths, the 20 sword shadows turned into 20 icicles and were frozen in the air. Bung! After freezing the sword shadows, the two girls shouted coldly again. Crack! Words were law. The 20 icicles shattered and turned into countless pieces of ice that fell from the sky. Qin Feiyang was stunned. They dissolved his Guiyuan sword art just like that? It seemed that these two girls were even harder to crack than he had imagined. Xuanning said, "If we weren't together, we might not be your match. But now that we've teamed up, you have no chance of winning." "Is that so? I wonder if you can freeze invisible things." Qin Feiyang raised his arm and pointed his index finger in the air. An invisible force surged out. The pupils of the two sisters contracted. In a trance, they seemed to see a beast hiding in the air, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it pounced towards them. Frost arts condense. The two girls didn't dare to be negligent and waved their hands. Immediately, the snowflakes that filled the sky gathered together and condensed into a thick ice wall in the air in front of them. Boom! Accompanied by a loud sound, the invisible force smashed onto the ice wall. However, only a few cracks appeared on the ice wall. Seeing this, the two sisters let out a sigh of relief and a trace of contempt appeared in their eyes. "Right now, our strength is comparable to that of a 6-star battle ancestor. And you, although you have a perfect battle art, you're only a 1-star battle ancestor. The battle strength you can display is at most a 5-star battle ancestor. Tell us, where did your chances of winning come from? I was originally a bit worried, but I didn't expect you to be so weak. If you don't want to die without a complete corpse, then immediately commit suicide to apologize." The two girls shouted. "Commit suicide to apologize? It seems that you've all become arrogant." Qin Feiyang laughed. Chapter 6, 27. Fight! Qin Feiyang shouted coldly. Boom! A monstrous battle intent rushed out of his body and into the sky. At the same time, his long hair and eyes quickly turned blood red as if they were dyed in blood, feeling the battle intent rushing towards them. The sisters couldn't help but tremble. In a trance, they seemed to have seen the return of an invincible god of war. Qin Feiyang looked at them and said calmly, "What other tricks do you have? Show me everything, or you won't have another chance." "Damn pervert, how arrogant! Snowstorm!" The two girls were furious. They waved their hands, and a violent wind suddenly appeared. The snowflakes that filled the sky danced with the wind and condensed into a giant, snow-white tornado that roared towards Qin Feiyang. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang took a step forward and went up to meet him with a palm strike. Golden light burst out. The snowstorm immediately stopped in the void and then whistled toward the sisters. What kind of battle technique is he using? The two girls' eyes were full of shock, and they quickly condensed an ice wall in the void in front of them. Boom! The snowstorm fiercely blasted towards the ice wall. The two girls' delicate bodies trembled, and they immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. "Giving you a taste of your own medicine. This is the ability of my battle technique," Qin Feiyang said calmly and took another step forward, instantly closing the distance between him and the two girls. His long hair and clothes fluttered in the wind, and his aura was like a rainbow. The sisters' hearts sank. From Qin Feiyang, they felt that he would kill any god or demon that stood in his way. They deeply realized that today, between the spiritual state and the Kong state, it would be either you die or I die. They made a prompt decision. The two girls used their strongest battle technique, Dance of Death. The snowflakes floating in the void suddenly danced. At first glance, it looked like a group of beautiful girls wearing white dresses dancing in the air, dazzling the eyes. But at this moment, each snowflake emitted a shocking sharpness, like an indestructible sharp blade. "Damn pervert, it's over." The two women's gazes were cold and piercing. With a wave of their jade-like hands, the dancing snowflakes suddenly turned into a torrent, filling the sky and surging towards Qin Feiyang. His aura firmly locked onto Qin Feiyang. I should be the one saying that. Qin Feiyang's eyes were overflowing with bloody light, as if there was a sea of blood in his eye sockets. He pushed his hands forward, and two golden lights suddenly appeared. As soon as the golden light appeared, it was like a raging wave in a vast ocean, fiercely rushing forward. Boom! Crack! The moment the two met, there was a stalemate in the void. The golden light was like a shield. Snowflakes crazily crashed into it, but they were all bounced back by the golden light and collided with the snowflakes behind them. Immediately, this place glowed brightly. The destructive shockwave was earth-shattering, destroying everything in the vicinity. Qin Feiyang's face gradually turned pale. Although the ability of the return formula could be said to be heaven-defying, the cultivation of the two sisters was two small realms higher than him. Moreover, the Dance of Death was also their trump card. For a moment, he couldn't do anything to the two girls. But at the same time, the two sisters' faces were even paler than Qin Feiyang's. In his heart, waves were surging. One had to know, Qin Feiyang was only a 1-star War Master, facing the combined forces of 2 3-star War Masters. He was actually able to steadily gain the upper hand. If he were to break through to a 2-star War Master or a 3-star War Master, who would be his match in the entire 9 provinces, they really couldn't figure it out. Qin Feiyang's battle art of returning the favor to himself. What level did it belong to? Could it be that it had already surpassed the perfect battle art? But in this world, wasn't the perfect battle art already the top battle art? Puff! 5 breaths later, the two girls couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood, their faces deathly pale. On the other hand, Qin Feiyang, although there were injuries, he didn't look weak at all. His spirit was hale and hearty. When the two sisters noticed this, they once again fell into deep disbelief. Could it be that this damn pervert was an unkillable cockroach? 10 breaths later, the two sisters' bodies began to tremble violently. The blood that flowed out of their mouths had already dyed their clothes red. It was also at this moment Qin Feiyang's eyes surged with killing intent as he said, "It's time to send you on your way." Boom! His arms shook, and a terrifying battle intent soared into the clouds. At the same time, an even more majestic golden light gushed out from his palms. The remaining snowflakes were all bounced back in an instant. Whiz! The snowflakes were like blades, accompanied by an ear-piercing sound as they shot towards the two sisters. Seeing this scene, the two women's faces were ashen. Their entire bodies were cold, and a sense of despair that could not be dissolved rose in their hearts. The god of death had descended. His life was in danger. Boom! But at this moment, a sudden change occurred. A resplendent beam of light, carrying an astonishing aura, shot out from the forest beside them. Boom! The snowflakes were instantly crushed. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. He turned to look at the forest beside him, and immediately saw a black shadow that turned and fled into the distance. "How dare you ruin my plans?" Qin Feiyang's eyes were filled with a trace of hostility, and he shouted without turning his head, "White-eyed wolf!" Understood. Wolf King immediately used the void escape step and chased after the black shadow. Immediately, Qin Feiyang turned back to look at the Shui sisters, his eyes filled with killing intent. But the place where the sisters were before was already empty. Immediately, Qin Feiyang's eyes darkened. He looked up and saw that 300 meters away, the two sisters were carrying a person each, quickly escaping. The two sisters were carrying Feng Wuxia and Feng Hua. "Something's wrong." Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's expression changed, and he chased after the four of them, because the two sisters were heading towards the place where Fatso and Wan Qiu were fighting, obviously to help Wan Qiu escape. Boom! More than 10 breaths passed. Suddenly, there was a deafening explosion in front of them. "Bastard, don't run if you have the guts!" Following closely, Fatso's angry voice sounded. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang's heart turned cold, and he did not continue to chase after them. Because Wan Qiu had grasped the perfect support technique and was also a 3-star war master, with his current speed, it was impossible for him to catch up. Not long later, Qin Feiyang saw Fatso rushing towards him. As soon as Fatso arrived in front of Qin Feiyang, he frowned. "Boss, what are you doing? Why did you let those two little girls run away?" Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. Originally, they were all going to die, but at the critical moment, someone secretly helped them. "Who?" Fatso was surprised. Qin Feiyang shook his head. "I didn't see it clearly either, but I told the white-eyed wolf to chase after them. Let's go and meet up with Lu Xingqian first." Fatso nodded. However, when the two came to the swamp, they found that Lu Xingqian was gone, and only the black dragon snake and the crocodile king were there. Qin Feiyang looked at the black dragon snake and the crocodile king and asked, "Where is Lu Xingqian?" The two beasts were slightly stunned. They looked around with confusion in their eyes. Fatso said angrily, "Speak." The black dragon snake shook its head and said, "Our attention was on Qin Feiyang just now, and we didn't notice when he left." Heard. Qin Feiyang and Fatso looked at each other with a trace of suspicion in their eyes. Lu Xingqian disappeared, and the mysterious man appeared. Was this a coincidence? Whoosh! Soon, a sound of breaking air came from the left side of the forest, and Wolf King landed in front of Qin Feiyang like lightning. Qin Feiyang asked, "How is it?" Wolf King said, "That man's speed was very fast. I couldn't catch up with him, and I didn't see his face clearly." What, even Wolf King couldn't catch up with him? Qin Feiyang and Fatso looked at each other. Didn't that mean that the mysterious man's cultivation was stronger than Wolf King's? Was there such a person in the other 8 states? Wolf King was suddenly stunned. He looked around and asked doubtfully, "Where is Lu Xingqian?" I was about to ask you. When you went to chase the mysterious man, was Lu Xingqian here? Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. The Crocodile King was subdued by Lu Xingqian, so there were some things that couldn't be said face to face. Wolf King thought carefully and replied secretly, I didn't pay attention to him at that time, so I didn't know. Why? Are you suspecting Lu Xingqian? Impossible, he is just a 7-star combat emperor. He doesn't have the strength. Qin Feiyang frowned. He was indeed suspecting Lu Xingqian, because Lu Xingqian's departure was too coincidental. But Wolf King's words were not without reason. Lu Xingqian didn't have the ability to do so. But what was going on? Why did Lu Xingqian leave without saying anything? Whoosh! At this moment, another air-piercing sound came from the forest on the right. Qin Feiyang turned his head and saw a white figure rushing over. Who else could it be but Lu Xingqian? Seeing Qin Feiyang and the others gathered together, Lu Xingqian was slightly stunned and said in surprise, Have you killed Wan Xiao and the others? No, they were rescued by a mysterious man. Qin Feiyang shook his head. What? Lu Xingqian's face froze, and he said in surprise, Who is this man who can rescue them from your hands? Qin Feiyang said, We don't know. We didn't see his face clearly. By the way, where did you go just now? After being asked by Qin Feiyang, Lu Xingqian suddenly thought of something and said in a low voice, Let's not talk about the mysterious man later. I'll take you to a place first. When he spoke, he looked a little excited. Where is it? Qin Feiyang and the others were suspicious. You'll know when we get there. Lu Xingqian smiled mysteriously and turned to lead Qin Feiyang and the others to the forest on the right. About 50 breaths passed. They came to a valley. The valley covered an area of hundreds of feet and was surrounded by mountains on all sides. There was no entrance or exit. Fatso glanced at the valley and asked, What is this place? You'll know when you get there. Lu Xingqian led the others to climb to the top of the mountain on the left. The mountain was only 100 feet high. They soon reached the top of the mountain. Lu Xingqian gestured for them to be quiet and walked to the edge. At the edge, they stood in the grass and looked into the valley. Immediately, Qin Feiyang, Fatso, Wolf King, Black Dragon Snake, and King Crocodile couldn't help but feel their scalps tingle. They saw that there were countless bones piled up in the valley. The white scene was like a hell. There were bones of both beasts and humans. Fatso said in surprise, What the hell is this place? There are so many bones. Lu Xingqian pointed to a place and said, The bones are not important. The flower is the key. Flower? Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned. They looked in the direction Lu Xingqian pointed at for a while, and their gazes suddenly locked onto a skull. That skull was the skull of a ferocious beast, and in the middle of the skull there was a blooming flower. This flower was rooted on the skull and was the size of a baby's fist. Its shape was similar to a snow lotus. It was white as if it was carved out of bones. However, it was different from the snow lotus. It only had 3 leaves, which flickered with an eerie white luster, giving people a gloomy feeling. Fatso looked at it for a while and asked, Is this a snow lotus? How can a snow lotus grow on a skeleton? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him. However, this flower did look somewhat familiar. Lu Xingqian said, This is the flower of death. Flower of death? Why haven't I heard of it? Fatso was surprised. Wolf King, King Crocodile, and Black Dragon Snake were also surprised. But at the same time, Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up. After Lu Xingqian's reminder, he finally remembered the relevant records of the flower of death. Fatso noticed Qin Feiyang's strange expression and was stunned. He said, Boss, there's something wrong with your eyes. Could it be some kind of treasure? But why does the name Flower of Death sound like an ominous item? Qin Feiyang said, In a sense, the Flower of Death is indeed an ominous item. What do you mean? Is there another meaning? Fatso was puzzled. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked up at Lu Xingqian. Since you know that it's the flower of death, you must know the use of the flower of death. Explain it to everyone. Lu Xingqian said, I only heard about it from hearsay. I don't know the details. It's better for you to explain. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. We're all smart people. Why bother pretending? Lu Xingqian was stunned, then shook his head and smiled bitterly. Brother Qin, can't you be more tactful with your words? At least leave me some face. Qin Feiyang secretly sneered and said, I've always been this straightforward. If Brother Lu is not used to it, I'll try to correct it in the future. That's not necessary. I like to deal with straightforward people like you. Okay, I'll talk about the flower of death. The flower of death itself carries a strong poison that can kill instantly. It's no exaggeration to say that even a combat master would die if touched. Moreover, except for a special flower called the jade crystal flower, nothing can detoxify it, including antidote pills. Of course, the legendary divine pills and miraculous medicines are a different matter. Lu Xingqian said, It's that scary? Hearing this, when they looked at the flower of death again, Fatso, Wolf King, Black Dragon Snake, and King Crocodile's eyes were filled with fear. It's indeed very scary. However, it has another name, the flower of immortality. Lu Xingqian said, Flower of death, flower of immortality. Why are these two names so contradictory? Fatso was a little puzzled and asked, Do you mean that the flower of death will never wither and will never die? No, the flower of death will wither. What I mean by immortality is that it can be refined into a magical elixir that can save lives. Lu Xingqian said. Black Dragon Snake said, That's not right. Didn't you just say that the flower of death carries a strong poison? Shouldn't it be refined into a fatal poison pill? You're right, but I also said that there's a special flower called the jade crystal flower that can detoxify the flower of death. As long as the flower of death and the jade crystal flower are combined, the poison can be neutralized and become a life-saving elixir. Lu Xingqian smiled. What kind of elixir can be refined into these two special flowers? What magical effects do they have? Fatso asked. Chapter 6:28 Essence Soul Pill. This pill has the magical effect of cultivating the sea of consciousness. Lu Xingqian said, Repair the sea of consciousness. Upon hearing this, Fatso, Wolf King, King Crocodile, and Black Dragon Snake's eyes suddenly lit up. At the same time, Dong Jingyang and the others in the castle were also full of desire, especially Dong Fengwuhin and Murong Xiong. Their eyes were full of greed. How is it? Tempting, right? But it's not that easy to refine the essence soul pill. First, the pill recipe. The pill recipe of the essence soul pill is probably only available in the capital of the entire Great Qin Empire. Second, this jade crystal flower is as rare as the death flower. As far as I know, it has never appeared in the spiritual state. Secondly, the other herbs. Although these herbs are not as precious as the jade crystal flower and the death flower, they're definitely very rare. Lu Xingqian said. Fatso, Wolf King, and the other beasts looked at each other. According to this, refining the essence soul pill was really not easy. However, Qin Feiyang lowered his head and seemed to be deep in thought. He felt like he had seen the jade crystal flower somewhere before. Let's not talk about this first. This death flower will definitely die if it touches it. How can I get it? Fatso lowered his head and stared at the death flower, almost drooling. Lu Xingqian shook his head and laughed. Don't show a covetous look. The death flower is a treasure to us, but to you it has no value at all. Why? Fatso frowned. Lu Xingqian said, Because you have fused with the fire of life. If the sea of consciousness is broken, The energy of the fire of life can repair it. Yes, Fat Lord is now immortal. How can you ordinary people compare to him? Fatso said with a look of realization, his face full of pride. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He raised his head and rolled his eyes at Fatso. To pick the death flower, you must first find the jade crystal flower. Yeah, if I didn't have the jade crystal flower to purify the poison, I'm afraid that I would end up like the owner of those bones. Lu Xingqian sighed. Although the treasure was right in front of him, it was harder than ascending to the heavens to get his hands on it. Qin Feiyang asked curiously, "How did you find this place?" "This is all thanks to the fire beacon and the twin sisters. When I saw Wan Qiu and Feng Wuxie appear, I wondered why Feng Hua and the twin sisters didn't appear. Later, when I saw them appear, I wondered if they were bound by something. After thinking about it again and again, I've decided to look around. Who knows, I might find something shocking. As expected, I found the flower of death here. On the opposite mountain peak, I also discovered some footprints. I'm guessing they were left behind by Feng Hua and the others." Lu Xingqian said. Qin Feiyang's pupils contracted. He didn't expect that Lu Xingqian wouldn't even let go of these details. Now he was really terrifying. After pondering for a while, Qin Feiyang said, "Take us to see those footprints." "Follow me," Lu Xingqian said. The group followed behind Lu Xingqian and arrived at the other side of the mountain after a long time. At the edge of the mountain peak, the soil was a little soft, and there were indeed many footprints left on it. Qin Feiyang glanced around and said, "Fatso, go and take a closer look." Fatso nodded, walked to a few footprints squatted on the ground, and carefully observed them. After a while, he stood up, looked at Qin Feiyang, and said, "Boss, it should have been left behind by Feng Hua and the others, because there are 2 footprints, and they are much smaller than the others. If I'm not wrong, they belong to the twin sisters." Qin Feiyang nodded. In this case, Lu Xingqian didn't lie. In other words, Lu Xingqian had nothing to do with the mysterious man. But who on earth was the mysterious man? Could it be them? Suddenly, Qin Feiyang thought of 2 people. They were the brother and sister that Feng Wuxie had mentioned. The brother and sister could predict his location, so they must have extraordinary abilities. Fatso glanced at Qin Feiyang and frowned. "Boss, what are you thinking about?" "Nothing." Qin Feiyang shook his head and put the matter of the mysterious man aside for the time being, because these questions couldn't be figured out. They could only find out in the future. He glanced at the death flower in the valley and whispered, "Go around and see if there are any other footprints." Lu Xingqian said, "Do you mean that Wan Qiu and the others may still be hiding nearby? If it were you, would you give up the death flower so easily?" Qin Feiyang asked back. "No." Lu Xingqian shook his head and said, "But I have to give it up because I don't have the ability to get it." Qin Feiyang said, "So you've given up?" "What else can I do? I can't risk my life to pick it up." Lu Xingqian smiled bitterly. Fat Lord is not willing to give up just like that. Fatso looked at the death flower, his eyes full of reluctance. Although it was useless to him, there was still Qin Feiyang and the others, right? Of course. Now that they had a cluster of fire of life, they basically didn't need the essence soul elixir, but they could keep it for emergencies. At the very least, they could take it to the auction. If the essence soul elixir was taken to the auction, it would definitely be sold at an unprecedented price. Lu Xingqian shook his head and said with a smile, "You can only look at it if you don't want to, unless you have the jade crystal flower. Yes, some things can't be obtained just because you want them. We've already wasted a lot of time. We can't waste any more time here. Let's go and look. When Fire Beacon and the others aren't here, we'll leave immediately." Qin Feiyang said. Lu Xingqian said, "I'll add that we'll split into 3 groups. Crocodile King and I will be in one group Fatso and the Black Dragon Snake Clan and Brother Qin and Wolf King will be in the other group. Be careful. Qin Feiyang nodded. Immediately, Lu Xingqian turned around with Crocodile King and searched along the right side of the mountain peak. Black Dragon Snake and Fatso searched along the left side of the mountain peak. Wolf King lay on Qin Feiyang's body and looked at Lu Xingqian's back. He asked telepathically, "Little Qinzi, is there really no other way?" "Yes," Qin Feiyang said to himself. The Wolf King was bewildered. Qin Feiyang said telepathically, "Do you still remember the strange flower I got from the lake?" Wolf King nodded. At that time, I felt that the strange flower was a little familiar, but I couldn't remember it. Later, because I was in seclusion to break through the War Master realm, I didn't think too much about it. It wasn't until just now when Lu Xingqian mentioned the jade crystal flower that I suddenly remembered that it was the jade crystal flower. Qin Feiyang said, "Really?" Wolf King was surprised. "Really?" Qin Feiyang replied. "Ha. So you deliberately sent Lu Xingqian and Crocodile King away to take the flower of death for yourself. You are indeed a cunning old fox." Wolf King laughed secretly and despised him. "What are you talking about? I plan to take the flower of death for myself, but I want to get rid of Wan Qiu and the others more. Because if we don't get rid of these people, they will bring us trouble sooner or later. There's another factor. Since the mysterious man is helping Wan Qiu and the others, does he also know about the flower of death? If he knows, will he find a way to take it? Although this is just my guess, it's worth suspecting." Qin Feiyang said to himself. Wolf King said telepathically, "You mean we should hide here and monitor?" "Yes, but before monitoring, I have to set up a trap first." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and he turned around and walked towards the foot of the mountain, pretending to look for Feng Hua and the others. Soon, he entered a small forest and saw that there was no one around. With a wave of his hand, Dong Xingyang appeared out of thin air. Dong Xingyang was about to ask, but Qin Feiyang hurriedly gestured for him to keep quiet. Dong Xingyang was stunned and understood. He said telepathically, "Why are you being so mysterious?" Qin Feiyang said secretly, "I need your cooperation." "How?" Dong Xingyang asked. Qin Feiyang said, "Pretend to be me and take Lu Xingqian and Fatso out of here later." "What about you?" Dong Xingyang frowned. Qin Feiyang said telepathically, "I'm going to stay here and wait for the mysterious man to show up." "Wait for the mysterious man?" "Qin Feiyang, don't treat me as an idiot like Dongfang Wuhin and Morong Xiang. If I'm not wrong, you should have a way to pick the flower of death." Your biggest purpose is to take the flower of death for yourself. Finding the mysterious man is just secondary. It's not right for you to do this. Dong Xingyang sneered secretly. Qin Feiyang and Wolf King looked at each other, and there was a trace of deep helplessness in their eyes. Dong Xingyang was not so easy to fool. "I can cooperate with you, but you have to give me a soul elixir. This request is not too much, is it?" Dong Xingyang telepathically said. It was a clear price. "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded and agreed without hesitation. Because both the flower of death and the jade crystal flower had 3 leaves, he could refine 3 soul elixirs. In fact, he had the biggest share. Straightforward. Dong Xingyang smiled secretly, took out a phantom elixir, and threw it into his mouth. Soon, he turned into Qin Feiyang. Then, he looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Where is Wolf King?" Qin Feiyang lowered his head and pondered for a while. Then he looked at Wolf King and said, "You leave with Dong Xingyang, but if there is a battle here, you must come to support me immediately." Even the white-eyed wolf could not catch up with the mysterious man, which showed how strong the mysterious man was. Therefore, before they really met, he dared not to take it lightly. Wolf King nodded, jumped on Dong Xingyang's shoulder, jumped a few times and said with a smile, Dong Jingyang, it's quite comfortable to stay on your shoulder. Why don't you be my human pet? I promise I'll take good care of you. Get lost. Dong Jingyang's face darkened, and he wanted to slap him. Humph. I'm the reincarnation of the peerless wolf. It's your honor to be my human pet. Don't be so ungrateful. If you don't agree now, I won't care if you beg to be my human pet in the future. Wolf King snickered. Crack! Dong Jingyang clenched his hands, making a cracking sound. He gritted his teeth and transmitted a voice. Don't worry, this kind of thing will never happen. No one can be sure about the future, so don't boast too early. Wolf King said meaningfully. Dong Jingyang immediately looked at Qin Feiyang angrily. It's like this. Forgive it, forgive it. Qin Feiyang smiled apologetically, glared at Wolf King, and transmitted a voice. Lu Xingqian and Fatso will be back soon. Let's go up. Dong Jingyang took a deep breath, walked out of the woods with Wolf King, and climbed up to the top of the mountain. When they arrived at the top of the mountain, Fatso and Lu Xingqian had already returned. Fatso immediately asked, Boss, did you find anything? No. Dong Jingyang shook his head and said, What about you guys? Fatso said nothing either. Dong Jingyang glanced at the flower of death and said, Then let's not waste time. Let's go. But as he spoke, his eyes flashed, and he turned and rushed into the depths. Fatso also looked at the flower of death and sighed, What a pity! No matter how important the flower of death is, it's not as important as life. There's nothing to feel pity about. Lu Xingqian patted Fatso's shoulder and chased after Dong Jingyang. Fatso really couldn't bear to leave, but he had no choice but to follow. After they left, Qin Feiyang quietly slipped up to the top of the mountain and lay in a bush. He hid his aura and concealed his figure, carefully paying attention to the movements around him. Time passed breath by breath. This place was silent. About 300 breaths passed. Boom! An earth-shattering sound suddenly exploded between heaven and earth. Qin Feiyang instinctively became alert. But then he found that the valley and the vicinity of the valley were still deathly silent. As for that loud sound, it came from a place several thousand meters away. He looked up, a trace of suspicion creeping up his face. Who was fighting over there? Suddenly, his expression changed, and he suddenly stood up, his eyes full of worry, because he suddenly remembered that the direction of the loud sound was the direction Fatso and the others went. Moreover, judging from the time Fatso and the others left and the distance, it was most likely that Fatso and the others were in trouble. What should I do? Qin Feiyang struggled in his heart. In the end, he gritted his teeth and continued to lie in the bush, monitoring the situation in the valley. With Fatso and Wolf King's power, even if they encounter a crisis, they could deal with it. Taking a step back, even if they couldn't deal with it, it should be no problem to escape. Time passed quietly. Qin Feiyang gradually began to become anxious, because there was nothing strange in the valley, and the mysterious person didn't appear. But the sound of battle could be heard incessantly. If Fatso and Wolf King teamed up, even a 4-star war ancestor would suffer great loss. But they actually fought until now. Without a doubt, they must have encountered a troublesome enemy. I can't delay any longer. Qin Feiyang muttered, got up, and was about to rush down the valley. But just as he stood up, he quivered again and quickly lay down, his gaze firmly locked on the opposite mountain peak. He saw a black figure suddenly appear on the opposite mountain peak. You're finally here? I'd like to see who you are. Qin Feiyang muttered as he stared fixedly at the black figure. In fact, the distance between the two mountain peaks wasn't far, but the blood mist in the air made it impossible to see the person's true face. The black figure was also very vigilant. He walked to the edge of the cliff and looked at the flower of death below, but he didn't immediately go down. Instead, he looked around. Seeing that there was no movement, the black figure jumped down and landed at the bottom of the valley. Qin Feiyang finally saw the person's appearance, but he was extremely disappointed. This person was wearing a pitch-black robe that wrapped his body tightly, looking very mysterious. Moreover, his face was also black, and he could only roughly judge that he was a man from his body shape. Qin Feiyang frowned, his eyes flickering. Suddenly, he took out the changshui, which was like a beautiful jade carving with a charming luster. The black-robed man didn't notice Qin Feiyang. He stepped on the piles of bones and walked straight toward the flower of death. 15 meters, 10 meters, 5 meters. When he was 2 meters away from the flower of death, the black-robed man waved his hand, and a palm-sized strange flower appeared out of thin air. This flower had a total of 3 leaves, which were like crystals gushing out rays of light. Jade crystal flower. Qin Feiyang's eyes were shining. In his heart, there was a trace of disbelief. He even had a jade crystal flower. Who was this person? At the same time, the black-robed man grabbed the jade crystal flower, then stepped in front of the flower of death and stretched out his arm to grab the flower of death. Whoosh! It was also at this time Qin Feiyang, like the incarnation of a cheetah, suddenly jumped out of the bushes and then, with the help of the gravity in the air, swooped down toward the black-robed man like lightning. "Sir, I've been waiting for you for a long time." At the same time, he said coldly, The black-robed man was shocked and looked up. When he saw that it was Qin Feiyang, there was a trace of surprise in his eyes. This look, when Qin Feiyang's eyes met the black-robed man's, his eyes trembled. Swish! Under the pressure of gravity, he swooped down very fast, and in almost 2 breaths he landed in front of the black-robed man. Then, he firmly grasped changshui and stabbed toward the black-robed man's lower abdomen. Seeing Pale Snow's attack, a trace of fear crept into the black-robed man's eyes. He quickly bent his waist and arched his body. At the same time, he took a step back and narrowly dodged Pale Snow's attack. But when the black-robed man retreated, Qin Feiyang suddenly waved his arm upward, and Changshui's blade immediately slashed across the black-robed man's mask. In fact, the previous attack was just a pretense. Qin Feiyang's real purpose was the mask. Crack! The black mask was split into 2 on the spot, and streaks of blood flowed down from the black-robed man's face. Obviously, this cut left a wound on his face, but when the mask fell off, the black-robed man quickly turned around and fled this place without looking back. "I already know who you are. Don't you think that you should kill me to silence me?" Qin Feiyang did not chase after him. Looking at the black-robed man's back, he said lightly, because even Wolf King could not catch up with him, let alone him, and he was not bluffing the black-robed man. Although he did not see the man's face clearly, he was too familiar with his eyes. The black-robed man stopped, but he did not look back or speak. What was he thinking about? Qin Feiyang sighed. "To be honest, I'm very surprised. Why is it you?" "Haha." The black-robed man suddenly laughed and said, "I'm also very surprised. You have already left with everyone. Why are you here?" But this sentence was said through voice transmission. After that, Chapter 6, 29. Blood dyed the black-robed man's face red, but Qin Feiyang could recognize him at a glance. It was Lu Xingqian. "I don't understand. You're a 7 stars combat emperor, but why is your aura so strong? Even stronger than mine." Qin Feiyang furrowed his brows and secretly transmitted his voice. Lu Xingqian shook his head and said, "There are some things that you'd better not know." Qin Feiyang said, "Will it cause trouble?" "Who knows?" Lu Xingqian smiled faintly, as if he wasn't worried that Qin Feiyang would discover his identity. Qin Feiyang said, "Then why are you helping Kong Province and Yu Province?" "Putting aside the grudges between Wan Qiu's group and everyone else. Let's just talk about the threat of these people." It could be said that Wan Qiu's group was one of the strongest competitors in this battle of the 9 states. Of course, it could also be said that these people were the obstacles to everyone entering the imperial capital. And Lu Xingqian couldn't have not thought of this. Logically speaking, he should have gotten rid of them at the first moment, but now he was saving them? Why was he doing this? It was absolutely impossible that Lu Xingqian didn't want to enter the imperial capital. Because if he didn't want to go, there was no need for him to participate in the Battle of the 9 states. So this matter was very strange. Lu Xingqian was silent for a moment, then took out a healing pill and threw it into his mouth. Then he wiped the blood off his face and smiled secretly. I have my reasons for doing this, but I can't tell you the reason yet. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, Are you that fearless? Lu Xingqian gave him the feeling that he wouldn't do anything, let alone expose Lu Xingqian's actions. He couldn't understand where Lu Xingqian found his confidence. Lu Xingqian said, I'm not fearless, but we need each other. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. What did he mean? Lu Xingqian transmitted his voice. Do you need me to tell you everything? Tell me about it. Needless to say, Qin Feiyang really wanted to know. He felt as if Lu Xingqian had something on him, but he didn't seem to have done anything shameful. Lu Xingqian said, Firstly, I am a 3-Star War ancestor, and I also have a perfect slaughter and support battle art. Furthermore, I also have a spatial divine item, so you can't kill me. What? Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled, and his heart was in turmoil. Lu Xingqian pursed his lips into a smile and continued, Secondly, and most importantly, I know your true identity. You are the son of the emperor of the great Qin Empire. Boom! Upon hearing this, Qin Feiyang felt as if he had been struck by a bolt from the blue, his head rumbling. He had always been tight-lipped about his true identity, except for Fatso, Wolf King, the Pangolin, and Lu Hong. Even Lin Yi, Luo Qianxue, and Ren Wushuang, the people closest to him, didn't know. But how did Lu Xingqian know? Did someone leak the secret to him? But was that possible? One had to know that whether it was Fatso and Lu Hong, Wolf King, and the Pangolin, they were all people he trusted the most and could trust. It was absolutely impossible for him to leak secrets. Lu Xingqian transmitted his voice with a smile. Are you surprised? To be honest, I have never understood why the son of the emperor would end up in a small town in our spiritual state. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, What else do you know? Lu Xingqian smiled. Except for your identity, I really don't know anything else. If you can solve the doubts in my heart, I am happy to listen. Qin Feiyang said, When did you know? Very early. Lu Xingqian smiled and said vaguely. Qin Feiyang fell silent and his eyes flickered. Don't think about silencing me. You don't have the ability now. Of course, with your talent, you may have it in the future, but you'd better be honest for now. Don't get me wrong. I am not threatening you. On the contrary, I will help you. Lu Xingqian said. Help me? Qin Feiyang frowned. Lu Xingqian said, Although I don't know why you left the capital, I can guess that there must be some reasons. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and he said, Continue. On the day you return to the capital, I expect that an unprecedented storm will be set off in the capital because of your appearance. At that time, as long as you, Qin Feiyang, say the word, I, Lu Xingqian, will definitely help you with all my strength. Even if your opponent is the current ruler, or even the current emperor, I will not back down even half a step. Lu Xingqian said firmly and decisively. Qin Feiyang's heart was shocked again. Isn't this Lu Xingqian's courage too shocking? He pondered for a while. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, I don't believe that pies will fall from the sky. Tell me your purpose. Lu Xingqian said with a smile, You will know my purpose in the future, but this is only secondary. I am helping you mainly because I want to repay you. Repay me? Qin Feiyang frowned. What's going on? Because I owe you a favor, And what I hate the most is to owe others a favor, especially you, Qin Feiyang. Lu Xingqian smiled faintly. Qin Feiyang was confused, really confused. He couldn't keep calm even if he wanted to, because from the beginning to the end, he and Lu Xingqian only had enmity and resentment between them. Where did the favor come from? There are some things that you may be confused about now, but when the time comes, you will know everything. Now tell me, what is your choice? Lu Xingqian said. I can't panic. Qin Feiyang closed his eyes and tried to calm himself down, because he was in a very passive situation. Only when he calmed down and thought about it could he find an opportunity to turn the situation around and seize the initiative. Most importantly, he couldn't tell which of Lu Xingqian's words were true and which were false. Lu Xingqian looked at Qin Feiyang. His eyes flashed slightly, and he said telepathically, You may think that I am threatening you now, but it is actually the opposite. I don't mean that at all. After that, he added, To be honest, even if you don't keep it a secret for me, I will not reveal your identity. Qin Feiyang opened his eyes, which were shining, and said, My identity will be exposed sooner or later. Even if you reveal it now, it will not be a threat to me. He was taking a gamble. He had secrets, and so did Lu Xingqian. Now it was a matter of who cared more about these secrets. Lu Xingqian frowned and asked, Then what will it take for you to choose to reconcile? Qin Feiyang smiled. Lu Xingqian's question was enough to show that Lu Xingqian cared more about his own secrets, and the initiative was back in Qin Feiyang's hands. Sometimes turning the situation around was that simple, as long as you could find the key point. I will keep my mouth shut about this matter. You don't need to tell me too much. I just want to know one thing. What is your relationship with Xiang Xiaolong? Qin Feiyang asked telepathically. Xiang Xiaolong? Lu Xingqian was taken aback. He thought that Qin Feiyang would ask some sharp questions, but he didn't expect that he would ask such an insignificant person like Xiang Xiaolong. This person's thoughts were indeed hard to guess. Qin Feiyang asked, Do you know what happened to Zhao He back then? Lu Xingqian said, Of course I know. He is that mysterious battle master. In order to track him down, you spent a lot of effort, and he also slaughtered countless people in the Dong family. At that time, the news was spread like wildfire. It was hard not to know. That's right. At that time, in order to find out his identity, we really racked our brains. But I remember that one time, in order to lure him out, I set up a trap and waited outside the prison with Yan Nanshan. But at that time, Xiang Xiaolong and his men quarreled with Xiao Jian in the Divine Temple, and Yan Nanshan was sent away. Later, I asked around. Someone told me that this dispute was because Xiang Xiaolong was jealous of Xiao Jian for Dongfanyu. Because of this, I went to meet Xiang Xiaolong. In the end, under my coercion, he told me that a woman arranged for him to do this. Later, Zhao he gave himself away, and I caught him in the act. I thought the matter was over and didn't pay attention to it anymore. After all, it didn't matter whether I killed such a small character or not. But when I returned from Yunzhou that night, I suddenly found that things were far from as simple as I thought. Qin Feiyang telepathically said. Lu Xingqian's eyes flashed. He thought to himself, what happened that night? Qin Feiyang said, I found that Xiang Xiaolong met with someone at the top of a mountain, and the person they were talking about was me. And the person who met with Xiang Xiaolong was you. How do you explain that? Lu Xingqian's pupils shrank. He sighed and said, I didn't expect that I would still be caught red-handed by you even though I was so cautious. Are you now suspecting that Zhao He and I are in cahoots? Qin Feiyang said, I don't deny it. Lu Xingqian telepathically said, I can tell you very responsibly that the matter with Xiang Xiaolong had nothing to do with me, Lu Xingqian, because I was already dead at that time. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows imperceptibly. Indeed, the matter with Xiang Xiaolong happened after Lu Xingqian's death. But for some reason, he felt that it had something to do with Lu Xingqian. Actually, my relationship with Xiang Xiaolong is very simple. He is just a chess piece that can do things for me. As for when I asked him to inquire about your situation, I admit that I had selfish motives. Because I know your identity, I have to know your whereabouts at all times. If you were unfortunately killed, wouldn't I have no one to repay my debt to? Lu Xingqian smiled telepathically. So you are still protecting me? Qin Feiyang looked at him playfully. What else? Brother Qin, not everything is so complicated. Sometimes you have to think in a simpler way. Why do you have to rack your brains over some unimportant people or things? Lu Xingqian smiled. Qin Feiyang said, You have a hidden meaning in your words. You have to believe me. There really isn't. How about this? As a show of my sincerity, I will give you this jade crystal flower and the flower of death for free. Lu Xingqian was very straightforward. He directly handed the jade crystal flower to Qin Feiyang without any reluctance. I will accept the flower of death, but I don't want the jade crystal flower, Qin Feiyang said lightly, because as long as he accepted the jade crystal flower, he and Lu Xingqian would be bound together. If Lu Xingqian was an upright person, it wouldn't matter. But the key was that this person had a lot of secrets. He couldn't get too close to him. Lu Xingqian was a little stunned. Obviously, he didn't expect Qin Feiyang to refuse the jade crystal flower. One had to know that this was a rare treasure. Others couldn't have it, even if they wanted it. After coming back to his senses, he smiled telepathically and said, Without this jade crystal flower, how can you get the flower of death? Don't be polite with me. Take it. In this world, you are not the only one who has the jade crystal flower. Qin Feiyang patted his chinquan bag, and a sparkling and translucent jade crystal flower instantly appeared. Lu Xingqian was surprised. He then shook his head and said, Brother Qin, you are very shrewd. Aren't you the same? You both want to take it for yourself. Why do you have to say such sarcastic words? Qin Feiyang didn't hide his sneer. Then he grabbed the jade crystal flower and the flower of death. He carefully pulled them out. When he grabbed the flower of death, an invisible energy surged into his palm and quickly spread to his limbs. This energy was the poison of the flower of death. However, at the same time, the jade crystal flower also surged with energy. It entered Qin Feiyang's body and removed the poison from the sea of death. Next, Qin Feiyang found a jade box and put the flower of death and the jade crystal flower into it. He sealed it and put it in his chinquan bag. Boom! The sounds of battle in the distance had not dissipated. Qin Feiyang frowned and asked, Who ambushed you? Ambush? Lu Xingqian was taken aback, and a puzzled expression appeared on his face. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, No? If that's the case, what's with the sounds of battle over there? Oh, you mean that? Lu Xingqian suddenly understood and said with a smile, We weren't ambushed. Wan Qiu and the others encountered a strong opponent. What's the situation? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. I'm not too sure about the details. At that time, I only saw a very average-looking woman stop Wan Qiu and the others. She seemed to be from Fengzhou. Fatso and the others should still be there watching the show. Lu Xingqian said. Qin Feiyang said, Did you run back at that time when Fatso and the others were not paying attention? Lu Xingqian shook his head and said with a smile, Nothing can escape your eyes. Qin Feiyang glanced at him indifferently and said, Let's go and see how strong that woman is. She even dared to stop Wan Qiu and the others. Her strength must be extraordinary, but we'd better not go together. Although we've spoken through voice transmissions, and only the two of us know what we're talking about, you did not say those words through voice transmission. Lu Xingqian said. Qin Feiyang nodded. The original sentence was, I already know who you are. Don't you think you should kill me to silence me? Dongfang Wuhin and the others, who were staying in the castle, must have also heard this sentence. Now, they were probably wondering who this mysterious person was. Therefore, if he and Lu Xingqian went together, when Dong Xingyang and Fatso saw them, they would definitely ask why he was with Lu Xingqian. At that time, the people in the castle would naturally suspect Lu Xingqian. Since they had temporarily reconciled, of course, they should avoid as much trouble as possible. Well, you go first. If Dong Xingyang and the others want to ask, you can just find an excuse. I believe this won't be difficult for you. Qin Feiyong said. Thank you. Lu Xingqian cupped his hands and thanked him, then turned and quickly left. 3-star battle Grandmaster. Perfect battle art, spatial divine item. How many secrets is this person hiding, looking at Lu Xingqian's back? Qin Feiyong muttered to himself, his brows tightly knitted. Before this, he only felt that Lu Xingqian was a little mysterious and did not pose much of a threat. But now he realized that the threat Lu Xingqian posed to him was far greater than the mystery. Sooner or later, I will dig out all your secrets and reveal your true colors. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.